Close your eyes. Imagine waking up in a void, realizing life was just a simulation. Consider that every atom in your body was forged in a dying star, or that the face you see in the mirror is a stranger no one else ever sees. Tonight, we journey through 27 profound thoughts. From the illusion of time to the silence of the stars. Let go of the day. It's time to question reality. 1. The grand illusion of consciousness. Imagine waking up one morning, not in your bed, but in a featureless void. A voice echoes around you, explaining that the life you just left was a simulation, a long and elaborate dream. The people you spoke to, the streets you walked, the sun that warmed your skin, none of it was real. It was a program, a story your consciousness experienced. Now, imagine a more unsettling thought. You never wake up. If consciousness is the sole medium through which we experience existence, how can we be certain that what we call the universe isn't merely a dream from which we have not yet awoken? Everything we perceive is a reconstruction, a translation of external data filtered through the imperfect mechanisms of our senses. Light is not color, it is electromagnetic radiation that enters our eyes. Sound is not music, it is vibrations in the air that rattle our eardrums. These raw signals are converted into electrical impulses that travel through our nervous system to the brain, which then painstakingly interprets this storm of data and constructs what we call reality. But it is crucial to understand that these signals are only interpretations, a user interface for a world we can never directly touch. They are not reality itself. They are not reality itself. This paradox is most vividly illustrated by our nightly experiences with dreams. When you are asleep, your brain constructs entire worlds from the fragmented archives of your memories, the turbulent currents of your emotions, and the random firing of neurons. Within these dreams you can see, hear, feel, and even experience profound pain, even though none of it physically exists in your bedroom. The dream feels utterly real while you are in it. You do not question the bizarre logic or the sudden shifts in scenery, because your critical faculties are subdued, and your mind accepts the fabricated world as truth. If a dream, a known product of our own minds, can feel as real and visceral as waking life, what definitive proof do we have that waking life is not just another, more persistent, and internally consistent dream? The only difference, one could argue, is the stability of the rules. But who is to say that the laws of physics are not simply the foundational rules of this particular dream state? Philosophers and scientists have wrestled with this existential question for centuries, each adding a new layer of doubt to our concept of reality. Plato, in his famous allegory of the cave, envisioned prisoners chained in a cave, able to see only the shadows of real objects projected on a wall. To them, these flickering shadows were reality. They had no concept of the world of forms, the true objects casting the shadows. Plato suggested that we are like those prisoners, mistaking our sensory perceptions for the true nature of existence. Centuries later, René Descartes engaged in a radical exercise of doubt. Questioning everything he knew, he supposed that an evil demon could be deceiving him, creating a perfect illusion of an external world, including his own body. He stripped away every belief until he was left with a single, undeniable truth. The act of doubting itself proved his existence as a thinking being. This led to his famous conclusion, cogito, ergo sum, or I think, therefore I am. While it affirmed his own consciousness, it did nothing to validate the reality of the world around him. More recently, theoretical physics has offered propositions that make the dream hypothesis seem less like philosophy and more like a plausible scientific theory. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics and string theory suggest that our universe might behave like a sophisticated simulation. Physicists like Nick Bostrom have argued that if any civilization ever reaches a technological stage where it can run ancestor simulations, simulations of their past so detailed they are indistinguishable from reality, then the statistical from reality. Probability is that we are more likely to be one of the countless simulated consciousnesses than the original biological ones. In this model, the universe is governed by mathematical rules and lines of code rather than fundamental physical objects. If space, time, and matter are just constructs of a program, then our experience of reality would be no different from an incredibly elaborate and immersive illusion. Lucid dreaming offers a compelling experiential analogy for this concept. In a lucid dream, the dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming while the dream is still in progress. This awareness grants them a degree of control. They can defy gravity, conjure objects out of thin air, or change the environment with sheer willpower. In our waking life, we feel bound by the rigid laws of physics. We cannot fly. We cannot walk through walls, and time moves inexorably forward. But in a dream, the rules are mutable. If our universe is a form of dream, we may simply be non-lucid participants, unaware of the true nature of our reality, and therefore unable to manipulate its rules. We are like the dreamer who has not yet realized they are dreaming, accepting the narrative without question. Consider the fluid and subjective nature of time. In a dream, you can experience events that seem to span hours or even days, all within the span of a few minutes of actual sleep. Neuroscientists explain that our perception of time is not a fixed constant, but a construction of the brain, influenced by the density of information being processed. If our brains can stretch and contract our sense of time so dramatically in dreams, could our perception of time in waking life also be a malleable illusion? If the steady march of seconds, minutes, and hours is merely a feature of our conscious experience, what does that say about the fundamental nature of reality? Quantum mechanics adds yet another layer of bewildering mystery. At the subatomic level, reality behaves in ways that defy common sense. Particles like electrons exist in a state of superposition, in multiple places or states at once, until they are observed. The very act of measuring or observing a particle forces it to choose a single state, a phenomenon known as the collapse of the wave function. It is as if reality requires a conscious witness to solidify its form. If reality only coalesces into a definite state when it is observed, does it even exist in a definite state when no one is looking? A dream operates in precisely the same way. The details behind you in a dream are not rendered. They only form when you turn to look at them. The dream world exists only as it is perceived by the dreamer. Some thinkers, influenced by these ideas, propose that consciousness itself is not a byproduct of the brain, but is fundamental to the universe. In this view, the universe is not a collection of lifeless physical objects that somehow gave rise to conscious beings. Instead, it is a vast unified field of consciousness, dreaming itself into existence. We, as individual points of consciousness, are fragments of this cosmic dreamer, experiencing a shared narrative. This concept echoes ancient spiritual tradition. In Hindu philosophy, the concept of Maya describes the material world as a seductive illusion, a veil that conceals the true, unified reality of Brahman. In Buddhist teachings, the self is seen as a fleeting construct, an aggregate of changing phenomena rather than a fixed, independent entity. Ultimately, the unsettling beauty of this idea is that it is impossible to disprove. Any evidence you might find to prove that reality is real, the solidity of a table, the pain of an injury, the consistency of physical laws, could all be part of the dream's programming. The dream is designed to feel real. A character in a video game has no way of knowing it is made of code. Its reality is defined by the rules of its world. This highlights a troubling but fascinating conclusion. If a dream can feel perfectly real, then our real life may only feel real because we have not yet been given the chance to wake up from it. The possibility that reality is not as rigid as we assume invites us to question more. to see the world with fresh eyes, and to embrace the profound mystery of our own existence. If nothing else, it makes the ordinary feel extraordinary, and that in itself is a thought worth pondering. 2. The unseen architect of the self. Life unfolds in disjointed pieces. Some fit together with a satisfying click, their edges aligning perfectly to form a coherent picture. Others seem as though they belong to a different puzzle altogether, their shapes jagged and their colors clashing with everything around them. Every person, every experience, and every decision contributes to this sprawling mosaic, an overall image that remains frustratingly incomplete until the very end. We spend our entire lives searching for the right pieces, often without knowing what the final image is even supposed to be. This slow, often blind, assembly of the self begins in childhood, where the first pieces are handed to us not by choice, but by circumstance. Our family provides the initial framework. The way our parents speak to us, the cadence of their arguments, the unspoken rules of the household, and the values they explicitly teach all create an early foundation. Some pieces are handed down without question, like family heirlooms. A child raised in a home that reveres education might see school as a natural, essential part of their puzzle. Another child, surrounded by the chaos of instability and neglect, may come to see uncertainty as the only predictable piece of their existence. These foundational pieces are not neutral. They are tinted lenses that shape all future perceptions. A person raised in a loving, secure home may collect future pieces with an inherent expectation of kindness from the world, viewing strangers as potential friends. Conversely, someone exposed to harshness and betrayal from a young age might approach the world with a defensive crouch, always bracing for the next conflict, seeing new people as potential threats. This initial set of puzzle pieces dictates not just what we see, but how we see it. It builds the very architecture of our assumptions about life, love, and our place in the world. School then throws a deluge of new and varied pieces onto the table. Friendships form, offering pieces of validation, camaraderie, and sometimes painful exclusion. Teachers, acting as temporary architects of our minds, influence our thinking and introduce us to ideas that extend far beyond the confines of textbooks. Here, a child learns that actions have consequences, that words can be wielded as both scalpels and salves, and that the act of fitting in is itself a complex puzzle requiring constant effort. Some pieces from this period fit easily, like a natural talent for mathematics or a burgeoning interest in history. Others feel forced, like trying to jam a square peg into a round hole, such as feigning interest in a subject that feels utterly alien. This is the period where we begin to consciously sort, choosing which pieces to place in the center and which to push to the edges. Adolescence arrives like a tempest, scattering the carefully arranged pieces across the floor. The comforting certainty of childhood evaporates, replaced by a fog of ambiguity. Friendships that once seemed permanent shift and fracture. The very concept of identity becomes a fluid, terrifying question. One day, a teenager feels an unshakable sense of confidence, only to have it crumble into self-doubt the next. The external pressures from parents, teachers, and peers add a cacophony of voices, each insisting on which pieces are most important. The teenager is faced with the daunting task of deciding which pieces from their childhood to keep and which to discard. Not every lesson from home remains useful. A rigid, black and white view of morality might need to soften as exposure to diverse perspectives introduces shades of gray. A deeply ingrained fear of failure, once a protective mechanism, may need to be reforged into a motivation for improvement and resilience. This is the first great culling, where we consciously decide that the puzzle our parents started for us is not necessarily the one we wish to complete. Adulthood presents the most intricate and high-stakes pieces. Career choices, romantic relationships, and the relentless pursuit of personal growth all demand our full attention. Some people seem to find pieces that fit with an almost magical ease. A person with a clear, unwavering career path may feel a powerful sense of direction early on, their professional life snapping into place. Others struggle, cycling through different jobs, cities, and identities before finding something that feels authentic. Relationships follow a similar, unpredictable pattern. Some friendships and romances fall into place effortlessly, as if they were pre-cut to fit our own missing edges. Others require immense work, sanding down rough spots and learning to accommodate imperfections. And some, no matter how much effort is invested, will simply never fit. Mistakes often feel like the wrong pieces entirely, foreign objects that mar the beauty of the final image. A poor career choice, a failed marriage, or a moment of ethical weakness can seem like catastrophic setbacks. But in the grand design of the puzzle, even these seemingly wrong pieces serve a profound purpose. A job that ends in burnout might teach invaluable lessons about personal boundaries and the true meaning of success. A failed relationship can clarify, with painful precision, what one truly needs and deserves in a partner. Each experience, whether coded as good or bad, adds depth and texture to the larger picture. Without the contrast of the wrong pieces, the beauty and rightness of the ones that fit might never be fully recognized. Personal growth is the force that constantly shifts the puzzle's design. What once seemed vitally important might fade into the background over time. A person who once craved the approval of others may learn to prioritize their own internal sense of fulfillment. A political or religious belief that once guided every decision may evolve or be replaced entirely with new experiences and information. The puzzle is never static. It expands, reshapes, and adjusts with each new phase of life, a living document of our evolution. Other people are not just sources of new pieces. They actively influence the shape of our own puzzles. A mentor provides a crucial missing piece by offering guidance at a critical juncture. A friend's unwavering encouragement can fill a gaping hole in our self-confidence. Even negative interactions contribute to the final image. A betrayal might teach the hard-won lesson of caution, while a deep disappointment might build the invaluable muscle of resilience. Every interaction, whether positive or negative, leaves its mark, altering the final image in subtle or dramatic ways. The puzzle is never fully complete, and perhaps it isn't meant to be. Even in old age, new pieces continue to emerge. A person may discover a new passion in their 70s, reconnect with a long-lost friend, or radically change a belief they have held for a lifetime. The search for pieces never truly ends. Some gaps will always remain, and that is part of the design. Life does not provide all the answers. The missing pieces are what keep our curiosity alive, driving us to continue searching, learning, and growing, forever engaged in the beautiful, maddening, and incomplete art of becoming ourselves. 3. The measured man in an unmeasured universe. People operate under the grand delusion that they control time. They meticulously mark it, track it, and cleave it into neat, manageable sections. Clocks tick forward with an artificial precision, and calendars methodically flip from one day to the next, imposing order on an inherently chaotic existence. The work week follows a predictable rhythm of labor and rest, and the years stack up in a careful, linear order, each one a testament to our attempt to tame the infinite. We live by the clock, a tyrant of our own making. But this raises a profound and unsettling question. Are we truly measuring time, or is time, in its relentless and indifferent passage, actually measuring us? The modern human wakes up not to the sun, but to an alarm, a digital shriek set to begin the day at a precise, predetermined moment. This alarm cares nothing for the body's need for more sleep, or the mind's desire for a gentle transition from dream to reality. The workday is rigidly defined, starting at 9 and ending at 5, with meetings slotted into sharp, unforgiving intervals. School bells ring, appointments are wedged into the open gaps on a schedule, and society runs on the shared fiction of punctuality. Yet, despite this frantic effort to command it. Time itself remains utterly indifferent. It does not speed up to accommodate our looming deadlines, nor does it slow down to let us savor a fleeting moment of joy. The seconds tick forward, steady and unbothered by the frantic rush of human lives. Our perception, however, is anything but steady. A child experiences time as a vast, malleable substance. A summer break stretches out like an eternity, an endless expanse of sun-drenched possibility, while a single school day can drag on with excruciating slowness. In stark contrast, an adult looks back on a year and wonders where it vanished, the months blurring into a single hurried montage. The perception of time shifts dramatically based on age, experience, and the volatile chemistry of our emotions. The same objective clock moves forward for both the child and the adult, but one experiences time as sluggish and drawn out, while the other finds it slipping through their fingers like fine sand. Stress, in particular, has a powerful ability to warp our internal clock. When a person is anxiously awaiting test results, time crawls, each second stretching into a miniature eternity. When they are rushing to complete a project against a deadline, hours seem to vanish in the blink of an eye. This phenomenon is amplified in life or death situations. A firefighter navigating a burning building may only have seconds to make a critical decision, yet in their mind, those seconds can stretch out, allowing for a hyper-focused state of analysis. A driver who narrowly avoids a catastrophic crash might recall the entire event in vivid slow motion, their brain processing the flood of sensory information at an accelerated rate. This neurological trick makes certain moments feel elongated and others too brief to grasp, demonstrating that our experience of time is not a passive observation, but an active construction. We can measure time down to the nanosecond, yet we cannot slow its pace or alter its direction. Athletes rely on incredibly precise timers to capture the smallest, most imperceptible differences between winning and losing. A runner crosses the finish line a fraction of a second before their competitor, and that tiny difference is recorded as the definitive outcome. Yet, to the athletes themselves, the race may have felt both incredibly fast and painfully slow at the same time. Their bodies move in real time, but their minds, flooded with adrenaline and focus, experience something entirely different. People often complain that they don't have enough time, a statement that reveals our fundamental misunderstanding of our relationship with it. We try to manage it, schedule it, and control it as if it were a resource to be allocated. Time management techniques promise to help us squeeze more productivity into the same 24 hours. Planners, apps, and digital reminders are all tools in our attempt to keep time in check. Yet, no one has ever added more hours to the day. The sun rises and sets with cosmic indifference. Whether our tasks are finished or not, different cultures approach time in profoundly different ways, further highlighting its subjective nature. Some, particularly in the Western world, view it as a rigid, linear structure, where being late is a sign of disrespect. Others see it as flexible and cyclical, where schedules serve as loose guidelines rather than strict mandates. In some places, an event is understood to start not at a set time, but when the important people have arrived. These varying perspectives shape how people live, work, and interact, but the actual physical passage of time remains the same for everyone. The sun moves across the sky at the same pace, no matter how humans choose to interpret the schedule. History records time on a grand, sweeping scale. The fall of an empire, the rise of a civilization, the brief span of a single human life, all measured in years, decades, and centuries. Yet time itself continues, unbound by these human markers. The Earth rotated on its axis long before humans invented a calendar to track its movements, and it will continue to do so long after our species is gone. The stars burned in the cosmos before we gave them names, and will continue to burn long after those names are forgotten. Time does not need our measurement to exist. While we have developed technology like atomic clocks that measure time with such accuracy they lose only a fraction of a second over millions of years, we cannot escape its effects. The body ages, the seasons change, and the universe continues its inexorable expansion. Some physicists and philosophers argue that time as we perceive it is an illusion, a human-made construct to make sense of change and entropy. They suggest that all of existence, past, present, and future, exists simultaneously, and that our linear perception is simply a quirk of consciousness. If time stopped, would anything exist at all? The debate continues, but one fact remains undeniable. We are subject to time, whether or not we fully understand it. Time and mortality are inextricably linked. A child rarely considers the passing years, but an elderly person feels their weight with each passing day. Birthdays seem to come faster as we age, not because time is moving differently, but because each year becomes a progressively smaller fraction of a life already lived. A year for a 10-year-old is a tenth of their entire existence, a massive portion of their experience. For a 60-year-old, that same year is merely 1/60th, a fleeting moment in a long history. The measurement does not change, but the experience of it does, profoundly. In the end, time moves with or without our consent or measurement. It does not care about our schedules, deadlines, or birthdays. It does not wait for anyone to be ready. We carve our lives into hours, minutes, and seconds, but time itself remains magnificently, terrifyingly indifferent. We measure time, but time also measures us through our actions, our experiences, and the inevitable, final passage of our lives. 4. The cosmic dust that calls itself I. Every single atom in the human body, from the iron in your blood to the calcium in your bones, has an origin story that stretches back across eons, long before it became a part of a living cell. It was once something else entirely. The oxygen that fills your lungs, the carbon that forms the scaffolding of your muscles, the nitrogen in your DNA. Each of these fundamental elements was forged in the unimaginable heat and pressure of a dying star's core. Stars, the great nuclear furnaces of the cosmos, burn for millions, or even billions of years, fusing lighter elements into heavier ones. When they reach the end of their lives, some of the most massive stars explode in a cataclysmic event known as a supernova, scattering their newly forged elements across the vastness of the universe. Those elements, adrift in the cosmic winds, eventually coalesce to form new stars, new planets, and on at least one small, rocky world, life itself. This means that every person is, in the most literal sense, made of stardust. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a physical, undeniable connection between the brief flicker of human life and the grand eternal dance of the cosmos. We tend to think of ourselves as separate from nature, cordoned off by our cities, our technology, and the sheer force of our collective will. Human progress often seems like a relentless push away from the raw materials of the earth. But no matter how advanced our societies become, no matter how sterile our environments, the body remains a collection of ancient atoms, each one having passed through unimaginable expanses of time and space before finding its temporary home in human form. This realization fundamentally challenges the way we define our identity. A person is not just their thoughts, their memories, or their experiences. They are also a transient configuration of matter built from the remnants of something far older and grander than humanity itself. Understanding this origin changes how we see ourselves. The body is not a static object. It is a dynamic process, a river of matter that is always in motion, always changing. Our cells regenerate constantly. Old ones die, and new ones take their place in a perpetual cycle of renewal. Some parts of the body, like the lining of the stomach or the skin, replace themselves with remarkable speed, turning over every few days or weeks. Other cells last longer. The bones, while appearing solid and permanent, undergo a slow but constant transformation as old material, is broken down, and new material takes its place. Even the brain, the supposed seat of our unchanging consciousness, continually reshapes itself. Neural pathways are pruned, new connections are formed, and the very structure of our mind adapts in response to every new piece of learning and experience. This means that no person remains physically the same for very long. If every part of our body is temporary, constantly being replaced, what does that say about the stability of our identity? We often define ourselves based on our past experiences, our personal choices, or our relationships. Yet, beneath all of that, the physical vessel of our selfhood is in constant flux. The molecules that make up your body today are not the same molecules that will make you up in the future. Despite this complete turnover of material, a coherent sense of self remains. A person remembers their childhood vividly, even though none of the cells from that period are still part of their body. The atoms change, but the continuity of experience and memory somehow persists. This paradox raises profound questions about permanence and change. If we are made of stardust, and that stardust is always moving, what is the anchor that keeps a person the same? The mind plays a crucial role in this illusion of continuity. While the body replaces its physical parts, the brain forms complex neural pathways that preserve memory, personality, and behavior. These pathways are shaped by experience, but they are also influenced by the physical structure of the brain itself. The neurons, the chemical signals, the electrical impulses. These elements work in concert to create a stable sense of self. But even the brain is not a fixed entity. It adapts, rewires itself, and grows in response to new situations. Identity, then, is not something a person has. It is something a person continuously builds over time, from ever-shifting materials. This cosmic perspective can reframe our relationship with change. Losing something familiar, a job, a home, a relationship, can feel like losing a part of oneself. But when viewed through the lens of stardust, change is revealed as the most natural process in the universe. The body has never been static. It has always been shifting, always responding to its environment. This applies not just to our biology, but to our personal growth as well. We evolve through our choices just as our cells regenerate. We evolve through our choices just as our cells regenerate. Some changes are small, barely noticeable day to day. Others are drastic, reshaping our lives in unexpected and sometimes painful ways. But all of it is part of the same fundamental cycle: the movement of atoms, the reorganization of matter, the continuous renewal of the self. The intimate connection between humans and the universe extends beyond the body. The earth itself, every rock, ocean, and mountain, was formed from the remnants of older, long-dead stars. We share the same cosmic origin as the ground beneath our feet. The air we breathe was once part of something else entirely. The water in our oceans has cycled through countless forms: rain, rivers, glaciers, and living beings, for billions of years. This means that nothing truly exists in isolation. Everything is part of a larger, interconnected system, constantly exchanging matter and energy. This realization can profoundly change how we perceive our place in the world. It is easy to feel small and insignificant in the face of the universe's sheer vastness. But if we are made of the same material as the stars, then we are as much a part of the universe as a galaxy or a nebula. We belong here, not because of what we achieve, but simply because we exist. This shared cosmic heritage can also foster a deeper sense of responsibility. If everything and everyone is fundamentally connected, then the choices we make have ripple effects that extend far beyond our immediate lives. The way we treat each other, the way we interact with our environment, the way we think about progress, all of these things are intertwined, part of a single cosmic story. For many, this idea brings a strange comfort. The thought that nothing is truly lost, only transformed, can be deeply reassuring. A person's atoms will continue their journey long after their consciousness has faded. They may become part of a tree, a cloud, or another living being. The cycle does not end. It only changes form. While this does not make the pain of loss any easier, it provides a different, broader perspective. Nothing ever truly disappears. Everything continues in some way, shape, or form. Stardust does not stay in one place, and neither do we. Our journey continues, shaped by the very same forces that created the universe itself. 5. The fabricated reality of the human mind. Reality is something we experience every waking moment. We move through the world, interact with people, and navigate the complex tapestry of our daily lives with a baseline assumption that what we see, hear, and feel is real. But how can we be sure that the world around us is truly as it seems? What if our perception of reality is not a clear window onto an objective world, but a carefully constructed fabrication, assembled by a brain that prioritizes survival over truth? Our senses are the primary architects of this construction. We rely on sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell to build our understanding of the world, but these senses are notoriously fallible. Optical illusions masterfully trick our eyes into seeing things that are not there, lines that appear bent but are perfectly straight, colors that seem different but are identical. Sound waves can be manipulated to create auditory illusions, making us hear tones that descend endlessly or words that aren't being spoken. Virtual reality devices can convince our brains we are standing on the edge of a towering cliff while we are safely in a carpeted room. If our senses can be so easily deceived, how much of what we experience every day is an accurate representation of the world, and how much is merely a plausible illusion? The brain does not passively receive information. It actively interprets sensory signals and constructs a version of reality based on them. The vibrant colors we see are not an inherent property of the world. They are our brain's way of processing different wavelengths of light. The rich flavor of food is not in the food itself, but is a complex synthesis of smell, texture, and chemical interactions constructed in our minds. Even our perception of time is a subjective experience, with moments seeming to stretch or shrink depending on our focus, emotional state, and the amount of new information being processed. If the brain builds our reality rather than simply perceiving it, then reality itself is not an absolute objective truth, but a deeply personal, subjective experience. This explains why people living in the same world can perceive it in drastically different ways. A person who is colorblind does not see the same sunset as someone with full color vision. A person who is deaf does not experience the same symphony of sounds as a hearing person. Even two people with the same sensory capabilities may interpret a situation entirely differently based on their past experiences, cultural background, or current mood. A tense business meeting might be perceived as a hostile confrontation by one person and a passionate debate by another. This raises a fundamental question. Is reality something that exists independently of us, or is it something our minds create? Philosophers have debated this for centuries. Plato suggested that we live in a world of shadows, only seeing faint reflections of a deeper, true reality we can never fully grasp. Immanuel Kant argued that while an objective world, the noumenal world, exists, we can only ever know the world as it appears to us, the phenomenal world, shaped by the inherent structures of our minds. Modern science, particularly neuroscience, has provided compelling evidence for how the brain actively constructs reality. Our perception is profoundly shaped by our expectations, memories, and cognitive biases. The brain constantly makes predictions about what it expects to see and hear, and it often uses these predictions to fill in missing information. This is why you can read a sentence with jumbled letters, as long as the first and last letters are in place. Your brain expects to see coherent words and constructs them for you. This efficiency is crucial for survival, but it means that what we perceive is often a blend of sensory input and our own mental models. Dreams offer another powerful lens through which to question reality. When we dream, we experience events that feel completely real at the time. We see vivid places, hear distinct voices, and feel powerful emotions. Sometimes, we wake up with a strong, lingering memory of something that never actually happened. If our dreams can create a temporary reality that feels so authentic, what truly separates the waking world from the dream world? The primary difference seems to be consistency and adherence to a set of rules we call physics. Yet, some people experience lucid dreams, where they become aware that they are dreaming and can even control their actions and environment. If we could learn to control our perception in waking life, the way a lucid dreamer controls their dream, would we be shaping reality itself? Technology is further blurring the lines between the real and the artificial. Augmented reality overlays digital information onto the physical world, merging the two in our perception. Artificial intelligence can now generate hyper-realistic faces, voices, and entire conversations that never existed. The rise of deepfake technology makes it increasingly difficult to distinguish between real video footage and sophisticated forgeries. If we reach a point where technology can create perfect simulations of reality, will we still be able to trust our senses? Will reality become a matter of personal choice rather than a fixed, shared experience? Quantum mechanics presents another profound challenge to our common-sense understanding of reality. At the subatomic level, particles behave in ways that defy classical intuition. They can exist in multiple states at once until they are observed, a concept known as superposition. The famous Schrödinger's cat thought experiment illustrates this paradox, describing a cat in a box that is simultaneously alive and dead until the box is opened and an observation is made. This suggests that the act of observation itself plays a role in shaping reality, rather than reality existing independently of our perception. If this principle applies beyond the quantum scale, then the idea of a solid, unchanging world that exists whether we are looking or not may be a deeply flawed assumption. Different cultures have long held views of reality that are far more fluid than the rigid, objective model of Western thought. Many Eastern philosophies see reality as an illusion shaped by human desires and attachments. In Buddhism, the world we perceive is considered a product of samsara, a cycle of suffering created by our own minds. Hinduism describes the concept of a maya, where the physical world is seen as a divine play or illusion that veils a deeper, unified truth. These perspectives suggest that reality is not something we discover, but something we participate in creating. Ultimately, the question of whether reality is an illusion or an objective truth may not have a simple answer. What we experience is a complex tapestry woven from sensory perception, memory, cultural conditioning, technology, and the strange laws of physics. If reality is a construct of the mind, then each person's experience of it is uniquely their own. If an objective reality exists independently of our perception, we still have no way of accessing it directly, unmediated by the flawed and biased filter of our own consciousness. The deeper we peer into the nature of reality, the less certain and more mysterious it becomes. 6. The final echo of a name. Most people do not consciously consider the last time their name will be spoken. It is not a thought that arises during daily conversation or mundane routine. Yet it is an absolute certainty for every person who has ever lived. At some point, whether it is days, years, or even centuries after you are gone, there will be a final, fleeting moment when someone, somewhere, thinks of you. A name will be read from a dusty document. A face will be glimpsed in a faded photograph, or a half-remembered story will be told for the last time. And then, silence. When that final echo fades, what does it mean for your existence? Does it signify a second, more definitive death, or does it mean nothing at all? The fading of a person's memory occurs in gradual, predictable stages. Immediately after they pass away, those who knew them well think of them often, with a painful and vivid frequency. Friends recall specific conversations. Family members are ambushed by memories triggered by shared moments, and co-workers bring up their familiar habits and quirks. The person is still a tangible presence in the minds of the living. But as time relentlessly moves forward, those memories become less frequent, their sharp edges softened by the demands of ongoing life. A son who once remembered his father daily then begins to think of him only on holidays. Eventually, he may only remember when a particular smell, a certain song, or a turn of phrase triggers a distant thought. Finally, there will be no one left alive who can recall what that person's voice sounded like, what they enjoyed for breakfast, or the specific way they laughed. Some names, of course, persist longer than others. Historical figures, writers, artists, and scientists leave behind a body of work that keeps their names in the collective conversation. A student may read a novel written 100 years ago and pause to wonder about the person who penned it. A scientist's name might remain immortalized in textbooks and laws of physics long after the people they knew and loved have turned to dust. But even these monumental names are not immune to the erosion of time. The farther back one travels in history, the fewer names survive. Even the great pharaohs of Egypt, whose magnificent tombs and monuments still stand as a testament to their power, are now mostly reduced to a name on a museum plaque. The intimate, human details of who they were as people, their fears, their loves, their private thoughts, are long lost to the sands of time. Consider the fate of an ordinary person, someone who lived a quiet life, loved their family, worked an honest job, and passed away after a long existence. They may have touched hundreds of lives in small but meaningful ways, yet within a few generations, their name will likely disappear from daily memory entirely. Their great-grandchildren may hear stories, but these tales become simplified, mythologized versions of the truth. By the time those great-grandchildren have children of their own, the details will have faded completely. Photographs might sit in a forgotten box in an attic, but without the context of lived memory, they become haunting images of anonymous strangers. Eventually, those images will be discarded or lost, and the final visual record of a life will vanish. Some people leave behind records that can extend their memory a little longer. Diaries, letters, or home videos might keep a name alive for an extra generation or two. But even these artifacts are fragile. Paper crumbles, ink fades, and film degrades. Digital storage offers a seductive sense of permanence, but this too is an illusion. Files become corrupted, formats become obsolete, and servers are shut down. The popular idea that everything posted online lasts forever is a profound misunderstanding of digital entropy. Websites disappear, social media accounts get closed, and without active, conscious effort from future generations to preserve it, a digital footprint fades just like everything else. The thought of being utterly forgotten is unsettling for many. It drives some to seek a lasting legacy, to write books, create art, or achieve something so significant that history will be forced to record it. Others focus on a more personal legacy, ensuring their children and grandchildren pass down stories and traditions. A few go even further, setting up scholarships, foundations, or businesses in their name, hoping to attach their identity to something that will outlast a human lifespan. These efforts can extend a memory, but they cannot make it permanent. For most people, memory lasts not in monuments, but in stories. A grandmother tells a child about her own mother, passing down a fragment of a life. A friend repeats a joke that someone once told them, keeping a small piece of their humor alive. A particular phrase or a quirky habit lives on in a family, with no one quite realizing where it originated. In this way, a person's influence outlives their memory. The individual may be forgotten, but something they said or did continues to ripple through time in small, invisible ways. The lesson a father teaches his son may fundamentally shape the way that son raises his own children. A stranger's single act of kindness might inspire someone to be kinder in their own life, creating a chain reaction of positive influence. The person is gone, but the echo of their life continues anonymous. There's also the question of whether being remembered ultimately matters. Some people spend their entire lives desperately trying to be known, only to realize too late that fame does not guarantee meaning or happiness. Others live quiet, unassuming lives, content to focus on their loved ones with no concern for how long their name will last. In the final analysis, does it truly change anything if someone is remembered for 100 years instead of 10? If no one ever says your name again after a certain point, does that retroactively diminish the value of the life you lived? A different way to frame this is to focus on impact rather than memory. If a person positively changes just one other life, even in a small, unseen way, their existence had profound significance. A teacher who encourages a student to pursue a hidden passion might never be remembered by that student by name, but their influence shapes a future. A nurse who comforts a patient in their final moments might not be mentioned in any history book, but for that one patient, in that one moment, they mattered more than anyone else in the world. The world is built on these invisible, unrecorded moments of influence. At some point, every person will reach their final mention. There will be a last time their name is spoken, a last time their image is looked at, a last time someone briefly wonders about them. This is not something to be feared. It is simply a fundamental part of existence. Everything fades. The sun will one day burn out, the earth will be gone, and every accomplishment and memory of our species will be lost to time. That cosmic reality does not make the present moment any less real. It doesn't render love, kindness, or effort meaningless. It simply suggests that life is about the act of living, not the legacy of being remembered. The mark we leave on the world isn't measured in how long our name lasts. It's measured in how deeply and authentically we lived. If a child laughs at a joke their grandfather once told, that laughter exists now, in the present. If a friend remembers an old conversation and smiles, that moment of happiness is real. Memory matters, but it is not the ultimate measure of a life. A life is measured by the moments that were lived, the people who were touched, and the love that was shared, whether or not anyone remembers it in the end. 7. The dream you can't wake up from. People wake up in the morning, stretch their limbs and shake off the vestiges of sleep, as if it were something entirely separate from the real world. But this distinction is a fragile one, built on assumptions we rarely question. Dreams feel profoundly real when you're in them. You don't pause to question the bizarre logic or the impossible physics as they happen. Your mind accepts the narrative without resistance. It is only upon waking, in the harsh light of a different reality, that you begin to see the gaps, the strange shifts in scenery, the nonsensical events that your dreaming mind took in stride. If our dreams, which we know to be fabrications, can trick the mind so completely, what is stopping our waking life from being just another, more elaborate version of the same illusion? Every single night, the mind builds entire worlds from the raw material of thought. It creates detailed places, unique faces, and complex situations that seem as solid and real as anything experienced during the day. It generates powerful emotions, terror, conflict, unbridled joy, without any external stimulus. If the mind possesses this incredible power to construct convincing realities during sleep, why should we assume this faculty simply switches off when our eyes open? A dream doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a disclaimer that reads, "Warning, this isn't real." It simply unfolds, and the person experiencing it believes in every moment with absolute conviction. Our waking reality could be operating under the very same principle. We trust our waking life because it appears to follow a consistent set of rules. Gravity reliably pulls us down, time moves relentlessly forward, and our actions have predictable consequences. But dreams break these rules with impunity. They shift without warning. People change faces in mid-sentence, and locations morph into one another. What if the so-called rules of our reality are simply a feature of this particular dream state? What if the perceived stability is part of the illusion, designed to make the experience more convincing? There is no absolute guarantee that things exist in the way they appear. The mind is a master at filling in blanks, assuming continuity, and smoothing over inconsistencies to create a coherent narrative. But these assumptions are not proof of reality. They are merely cognitive shortcuts that make the world easier to navigate. Imagine dreaming that you are walking through your own home. Everything looks exactly as it should. The furniture is in its proper place, the lights are on, and the ambient sounds are familiar. It all seems perfectly normal. Then, you notice something subtly wrong. A picture frame on the wall is hanging upside down. The television is missing from its stand. Suddenly, the feeling of normalcy shatters, and you wake up, realizing it was all a dream. But for the entire duration of that dream, your brain had convinced you, with perfect fidelity, that it was real. If the mind can execute such a flawless deception during sleep, there is no logical reason to believe it ceases this activity after you wake up. Philosophers and scientists have relentlessly picked at the seams of reality for centuries. René Descartes famously suggested that our senses are fundamentally untrustworthy. He reasoned that, because the mind can be so easily fooled by dreams and illusions, the only thing he could be absolutely sure of was the act of his own thinking. This led to his foundational statement, I think, therefore I am. The very fact that he was aware of his own thoughts was the only proof he had of his own existence. Everything else, including the entire physical world and his own body, could be an elaborate deception orchestrated by a malicious demon. Modern science has only added more layers to this puzzle. Quantum mechanics reveals a subatomic world that behaves in ways that are profoundly counterintuitive. Particles appear to exist in multiple states at once until they are observed, suggesting that reality itself changes based on perception. If reality shifts and solidifies depending on whether someone is watching, then how stable and objective can it truly be? The brain processes a constant stream of sensory information, translating it into a coherent experience of the world. But it's crucial to remember that the brain never interacts with the world directly. It only ever receives a series of electrical signals from our sensory organs, which it then interprets. If those signals were artificially generated, the subjective experience would be identical. A person plugged into a perfect simulation, like the characters in Ati Matrixi, would have no way of knowing they were in one, unless a glitch in the program gave it away. There is no way to be absolutely certain that the signals coming into your brain reflect an external, objective world instead of something else entirely, a cosmic dream, a computer program, or the product of your own isolated consciousness. Think about the strange phenomenon of déjà vu. It's the powerful, unsettling feeling that a new moment has happened before. It strikes suddenly, without warning, and disappears just as quickly. Science often explains it as a minor glitch in memory processing, a momentary misfiring in the brain's temporal lobes. But that explanation doesn't diminish the raw subjective feeling of the experience. What if déjà vu is a momentary glimpse of another version of reality? What if it's a crack in the illusion, proof that time isn't as linear as it seems? If the brain can make a person feel like they've lived a moment before, then their experience of time isn't as solid and reliable as they believe. Lucid dreaming adds another fascinating layer to this inquiry. In a lucid dream, the dreamer becomes aware that they are dreaming and can sometimes seize control of the narrative. They can choose where to go, what to do, and even manipulate the dream world around them. But before that moment of realization, the dream feels completely real. This raises a tantalizing question. If waking life is also a kind of dream, what would happen if someone became lucid within it? What if the realization of the illusion leads to control over it? If a person can alter their dream world simply by recognizing it as a dream, could they alter waking reality in the same way? The line between dreams and reality is not as clear and distinct as we like to believe. Dreams feel real while they are happening. Waking reality feels real in precisely the same way. The mind is the architect of both. It uses the same neural processes, the same imaginative faculties, to construct our experience of waking life as it does to create our dreams. If the mind can fabricate a world that seems perfectly real at night, there is no logical reason it couldn't be doing the same thing during the day. The ultimate question, then, is not whether our reality is a dream. The more unsettling question is whether anyone ever truly wakes up. But the main chef. Set 8. The Unheard Symphony of Existence. A colossal tree stands tall in the middle of a quiet, ancient forest. Its roots, like gnarled fingers, dig deep into the rich soil, holding it firm against the relentless push of the wind and the slow erosion of the rain. For centuries, it has grown, stretching its branches toward the sun in a silent, patient aspiration. Then one day, its time comes. The wood groans under its own immense weight, a deep, resonant sound that vibrates through its core. The massive trunk cracks, and its leaves rustle in a final frantic whisper as it begins its slow, inexorable tip toward the ground. When it finally lands, there is a thunderous crash, a deep, primal thud that shakes the very earth beneath it. But if no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? This question, seemingly simple, has been a cornerstone of philosophical debate for generations. Some dismiss it as a mere thought experiment, a semantic game of definitions. But for others, it is a key that unlocks a much deeper inquiry into the very nature of reality, perception, and existence itself. At its most fundamental level, sound is nothing more than vibrations moving through a medium, typically the air. When an object like a tree strikes the forest floor, it displaces air molecules, creating pressure waves that travel outward in all directions. If a person, an animal, or any creature with an auditory system is standing nearby, their ears will capture these waves, and their brain will interpret them as the phenomenon we call sound. But if no ears are around to receive and process these vibrations, what are they? Are they still sound, or are they merely silent, invisible movements in the air? This question does not just apply to falling trees. It stretches into the very fabric of how we experience reality. So much of our world is shaped and defined by what we see, hear, and feel. If no one is there to observe an event, does it still exist in the same way? This inquiry immediately brings us to the concept of perception. Our senses are the only tools we have to define the world around us, but they are also our greatest limitation. We can only hear within a certain narrow range of frequencies. We can only see a tiny sliver of the vast electromagnetic spectrum. What exists beyond the boundaries of our perception? If a sound is produced at a frequency that is too high or too low for human ears, like the ultrasonic calls of a bat or the infrasonic rumbles of an elephant, does it still count as a sound? To the bat and the elephant, it certainly does. Their reality is filled with a rich tapestry of sounds that are completely absent from our own. Imagine a powerful thunderstorm rolling through an empty sky. Lightning flashes and thunder booms. If you are standing outside, you hear the deep, chest-rattling rumble and feel it shake the ground beneath you. But a dog standing next to you hears much more than that. Its sensitive ears pick up higher frequencies that you cannot detect. A bat flying nearby perceives an entirely different world of sound, navigating through the storm with echolocation. If each creature experiences a different auditory reality, which version is the correct one? This leads to a larger, more unsettling question about existence itself. How much of reality is dependent on observation? Some philosophers, known as idealists, argue that reality exists only as it is perceived. Without a mind to recognize and interpret it, there is no sound, no color, no meaning. Only a chaotic, undefined flux of potential. Others, the realists, contend that the physical world exists independently of perception. The tree, the vibrations, the laws of physics, all of these things exist and operate whether someone is there to witness them or not. Modern physics, particularly quantum mechanics, has added a bizarre and fascinating layer to this ancient debate. At the subatomic level, particles like electrons behave differently depending on whether they are being observed. When not observed, they exist in a state of probability, a wave of potential outcomes. The very act of measuring them seems to force them into a single definite state. This suggests that, At least on the smallest scales of reality, observation plays a fundamental role in shaping what is real. If this principle applies to the universe as a whole, it means that unobserved things may exist in a profoundly different way than observed ones. Let's return to the tree in the forest. It falls, sending powerful vibrations rippling through the air and ground, regardless of whether a listener is present. The physical event is undeniable. But does sound require a listener? This question transcends physics and touches on the core of human experience. If something happens but no one witnesses it, does it truly matter? Think about the countless moments in our own lives that go unseen. A person trains in solitude for years, mastering a difficult skill. If no one ever acknowledges their immense effort and dedication, does that effort still have value? A writer spends sleepless nights crafting a novel that no one ever reads. Does their story truly exist if it is never shared and experienced by another mind? A musician plays a beautiful piece of music in an empty room. Is there still music if there is no one there to listen? These thoughts can be deeply unsettling. As social creatures, humans have a profound need for validation. We want our struggles to be seen, our accomplishments to be heard, and our existence to be understood. The idea that our meaning or even our reality depends on an external observer challenges our sense of autonomous selfhood. But consider another perspective. If a tree falls and no one hears it, the forest itself still changes irrevocably. The ground shakes, startling animals into flight. A new clearing is created, allowing sunlight to reach the forest floor for the first time in a century, sparking the growth of new life from the remains of the old. The tree's fall has a definite, tangible impact, whether or not it is witnessed by a conscious observer. This principle applies to people as well. Just because an act of kindness isn't seen doesn't mean it didn't happen. Just because a personal struggle isn't acknowledged by others doesn't mean it wasn't worthwhile. Growth, struggle, and creativity all possess an intrinsic value, even in complete solitude. The question of the falling tree also extends to our understanding of history. Countless significant events have occurred without ever being recorded. Entire civilizations have risen and fallen without leaving behind any discernible traces. Their stories, their achievements, their art, and their struggles are likely lost to time forever. Does that mean they never existed, or does their influence still echo through history in subtle, untraceable ways? The event occurs with or without a witness. But the sound eye, the experience of it, requires a listener. This is the crucial line between physical reality and conscious perception. The universe may be filled with a symphony of falling trees, exploding stars, and colliding galaxies. But without a mind to perceive it, it is a silent, unheard performance. 9. The star-forged machine that thinks it is you. Everything in your body, from the delicate architecture of your skin to the dense mineral lattice of your bones, comes from the scattered remnants of ancient, exploded stars. The iron in your blood that carries oxygen, the calcium that gives your skeleton its strength, the oxygen you inhale with every breath. All of it was forged in the crucibles of massive cosmic explosions that occurred billions of years ago. When you look up at the vast, indifferent tapestry of the night sky, you are not gazing upon something separate from yourself. You are, in a very real sense, a product of the exact same violent and beautiful process that created the stars. This is not a flight of poetic fancy. It is a fundamental truth of physics and biology. Imagine a distant, massive star reaching the end of its life, its core collapsing under the immense force of its own gravity. In its final spectacular moments, it erupts in a supernova, releasing a torrent of newly created elements into the cold vacuum of space. Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and iron, the very building blocks of life, are cast out across the cosmos. Over millions and billions of years, these particles drift through the interstellar medium, mixing with vast clouds of gas and dust. Some of this cosmic debris eventually falls under the sway of gravity once more. coalescing to form new stars, new planets, and, in at least one instance, life itself. The atoms that currently constitute your body have been on a journey far longer and more epic than all of recorded human history. Your body functions like a tiny self-contained universe, a bustling metropolis of biological machinery. It contains approximately 37 trillion cells, each one acting like a miniature city with its own power plants, transportation systems, and communication networks. Within these cells, atoms and molecules interact in a staggeringly complex dance to sustain life. Proteins fold into precise, intricate shapes that guide the biochemical reactions essential for your survival. Mitochondria, the cellular powerhouses, generate energy by converting the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you moving, thinking, and breathing. Your DNA, a microscopic library of information, holds the genetic instructions that shape who you are, passed down from countless generations of ancestors. The sheer complexity of this system is breathtaking, yet it operates seamlessly, most of it far below the threshold of your conscious effort. Zoom in even further, past the cells and molecules, and you reach the strange and counterintuitive realm of the subatomic. The particles that make up your body, the protons, neutrons, and electrons, are not the solid, billiard ball-like objects we imagine. They exist in ephemeral states of probability, appearing and disappearing, in a quantum dance that defies our everyday intuition. The same four fundamental forces that hold galaxies together and govern the motion of planets also dictate the intricate chemistry inside every one of your cells. Electromagnetism drives the nerve signals that flash through your brain. The strong and weak nuclear forces stabilize the atoms that form your tissues. Gravity keeps your feet firmly on the ground while simultaneously shaping the majestic motion of entire star systems. You are not separate from these cosmic forces. You are a living, breathing expression of them. Now, consider the dimension of time. Every second that passes, your body is in a state of constant flux. Cells die and are replaced. Skin sheds and regenerates. And the food you consume is broken down and meticulously reassembled into new cells. It is estimated that every 7 to 10 years, nearly every single atom in your body has been replaced by a new one. The physical body you inhabit now is not the same body you had a decade ago. Yet, despite this complete material turnover, your sense of self, your I, remains stubbornly consistent. If your physical form is constantly being rebuilt from new materials, then what is it that defines you? Is it your memories? Your consciousness? Or something deeper and more mysterious? The connection between your body and the environment is not a one-way street. It is a continuous, dynamic exchange. The air you breathe has been inhaled and exhaled by countless other living beings throughout history. The water in your body has traveled through rivers, clouds, and oceans for millions of years before becoming a temporary part of you. The food you eat comes from plants and animals that absorb their energy directly from the sun, our local star. Every action you take, every breath, every step, inextricably links you to the wider world and the cosmos beyond. You are not just living wing the universe. The universe is living high through you. This interconnectedness extends even to the realm of thought. Your thoughts, emotions, and subjective experiences are all shaped by a cascade of electrical impulses and chemical reactions in your brain. These biological processes, in turn, rely on the fundamental laws of atomic and subatomic physics. In a very real sense, the universe is not just inside your body. It is inside your mind. When you imagine, dream, or create, you are using the very same particles and energies that once formed the cores of distant stars and planets. Consciousness itself remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of science. While some theories suggest it is an emergent property arising from the complex interactions of neurons, others propose deeper connections to the fundamental nature of reality itself. Even your perception of time is a cosmic construct. You experience the present moment, but the past exists only as a reconstruction in your memory, and the future is merely a realm of possibility. Light takes time to travel, so when you look at the sun, you are seeing it as it was 8 minutes ago. When you gaze at distant stars, you are looking thousands or even millions of years back in time. Your vision is a form of time travel. The boundary between you and not you is far more permeable than we commonly assume. You are a temporary gathering of matter and energy, a whirlpool in the great river of the cosmos, constantly in motion and exchange with your surroundings. In a sense, you are not a noun. You are a verb. You are not a static thing, but a dynamic, ongoing process. When you truly reflect on who you are, remember that you are not just a single, isolated being moving through time. You are a part of a vast, ancient, and ever-changing cosmos. Your body, your mind, and the universe are not separate things. They are different expressions of the same fundamental, star-forged reality. When you look up at the stars, you are looking at a reflection of yourself, scattered across the immensity of space and time. The universe is not just around you, it is profoundly, undeniably within you. Within you. 10. The ghost in the machine. Déjà vu and glimpses of tomorrow. Déjà vu is the strange, jarring sensation that you have already experienced a new moment before. It can strike at any time, in any place. Walking into a new cafe for the first time, having a mundane conversation with a friend, or even hearing a song you're certain you've never encountered. The feeling is fleeting, lasting for just a few disorienting seconds, but its effect is unsettling. Your conscious mind tells you, with certainty, that this moment is new, yet a deeper, more primal part of your brain insists that it has all happened before. This phenomenon has long fascinated scientists, philosophers, and writers, all of whom have tried to explain why it occurs. Some theories suggest it is a simple glitch in the brain's complex memory processing systems. Others propose more esoteric explanations, believing it could be a sign of something far deeper, like the brief, accidental crossing of parallel realities. One of the leading scientific explanations comes from the field of neuroscience. One of the leading scientific explanations comes from the field of neuroscience. The brain is constantly recording our experiences, sorting and storing them in different areas for later retrieval. When you see, hear, or feel something, your brain classifies the information and decides whether it is a new experience or a familiar one. The theory suggests that sometimes this intricate system momentarily fails. Instead of correctly tagging an event as a new experience, the brain mistakenly stores it directly into long-term memory before it has been fully processed by short-term memory. This creates the powerful illusion that you have already lived that exact moment because your brain is registering it as the retrieval lie of an old memory rather than the creation of a new one. It is not that the experience has actually happened before. It is that your brain is filing it in the wrong cabinet. Our understanding of memory itself supports this idea. Memory is not a perfect high-fidelity recording of the past. When you recall an event, your brain does not play it back like a video. Instead, it actively reconstructs the memory from fragmented pieces of information, and each time it does so, the memory can be subtly altered. This is why our recollections of past events can change over time. Déjà vu might be intrinsically linked to this reconstructive process. If the brain accidentally retrieves a fragment of an old, forgotten memory that bears a passing resemblance to what is happening in the present, it might trick you into thinking you have lived this exact moment before. This would explain why déjà vu often feels intensely familiar but frustratingly difficult to place. Another neuroscientific idea suggests that déjà vu occurs when the two hemispheres of the brain fall out of sync for a split second. The human brain is divided into two halves, which constantly communicate with each other through a massive bundle of nerves called the corpus callosum. If one hemisphere processes sensory information just a few milliseconds faster than the other, you might perceive the same moment twice in rapid succession. The delay would be almost imperceptibly tiny, but it could be just enough to create the uncanny feeling that the event has already happened. The first perception is registered, and the second, delayed perception, feels like a memory of the first. Psychologists have also studied the link between déjà vu and the subconscious mind. Our brains are constantly picking up on details in our environment that we are not consciously aware of. A familiar scent, a particular arrangement of furniture, or the specific way the light enters a room might subliminally remind you of something you once saw in a completely different context, perhaps in a movie, a dream, or a photograph. Your brain registers the similarity on a subconscious level, but since the connection is not obvious to your conscious mind, it creates the eerie feeling that the entire moment has occurred before. This type of subconscious pattern recognition happens all the time, but déjà vu may be a particularly powerful and disorienting example of it. However, some explanations venture beyond the known territory of science. The tantalizing idea of parallel realities, or the multiverse, suggests that multiple versions of our universe exist simultaneously. If these realities are slightly different, but follow similar trajectories, it is possible that other versions of you, in other dimensions, are experiencing moments very similar to your own. When déjà vu occurs, it could be a brief, accidental overlap between these realities. For a split second, you might be sensing an experience that has already happened to another version of yourself. This idea, while impossible to prove, continues to fascinate people because it suggests that reality is far more complex and layered than we assume. This concept is rooted in some interpretations of quantum mechanics, such as the many worlds interpretation, which posits that every possible outcome of a quantum measurement actually occurs, but in separate, branching universes. If this is true, there could be countless versions of you living out slightly different lives. Déjà vu might be a momentary glitch in the fabric of reality, where the boundary between these parallel worlds becomes temporarily thin, allowing a feeling of familiarity to bleed through. A related but distinct theory suggests that déjà vu could be evidence of time loops or temporal distortions. If time is not the strict, linear progression we perceive it to be, then it's possible that some moments might repeat or fold over on themselves. This would mean that déjà vu is not just a memory error, but an actual experience of a moment repeating in some way. While this idea is highly speculative, it aligns with certain theories in theoretical physics that suggest time might not work in the straightforward way our intuition tells us it does. Some people also believe that déjà vu is a sign of past lives, suggesting that certain moments feel familiar because they echo experiences from a previous incarnation. While this theory is more spiritual than scientific, it reflects the deep human tendency to look for meaning and patterns in mysterious experiences. Regardless of the ultimate explanation, déjà vu remains a profound and common mystery. Whether it's a simple glitch in memory, a glimpse of an alternate reality, a message from the subconscious, or something else entirely, it serves as a powerful reminder that the human mind is a complex and often unreliable narrator of our reality. The feeling is fleeting, but the questions it raises about memory, time, and the nature of consciousness linger long after the moment has passed. 11. The unspoken weight of the final word. Imagine you're in a conversation with someone important to you. It might be a family member, a close friend, or even someone you haven't spoken to in years. You don't know it at the time, but the words you are about to speak will be the last ones you ever say to them. There will be no second chance, no follow-up text message to clarify your meaning, no future meeting to apologize, and no way to undo whatever words you choose in that final, unscripted moment. That last exchange, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, will be what lingers in the air forever. A great many people live their lives without considering this possibility, until it is far too late. They operate under the comforting assumption that there will always be more time. Time to explain, time to apologize, time to reconnect, or time to fix what was left broken. But time is not a reliable ally. One day, someone walks out of a room, and that is the last time you will ever see them. One day you hang up the phone, and the next time it rings, it is someone else on the line telling you they are gone. Telling you they are gone. Sometimes, those final, accidental words are warm and meaningful. I love you. Take care of yourself. I'm so proud of you. These phrases leave behind a sense of peace, a small, comforting anchor in the turbulent sea of grief. They become a final testament to a relationship's true nature. Other times, however, they are sharp, thoughtless, or painfully ordinary. You're being ridiculous. I don't have time for this right now. See you later. When later never comes, those words hang in the air, unfinished and heavy with unspoken regret. They become a source of torment, replaying in a relentless loop in the mind of the one left behind. A man once spoke about the last conversation he ever had with his father. They had argued over something trivial, a disagreement about politics or money. He couldn't even remember the specifics. He left the house angry, slamming the door behind him. His father died of a sudden heart attack that same night. For years afterward, the only thing the man could hear in his mind was the sharp, dismissive sound of his own voice, saying something he didn't even mean. He confessed that he would have given anything, his career, his home, his future, for just one more minute to go back and say something different. But time does not grant such favors. Then there are the countless moments when you don't even realize the potential weight of what you're saying. A mother drops her child off at school with a quick, distracted "be good." A friend ends a text conversation with a casual "I'll catch you later." Someone leaves for work after a simple, routine "see you tonight." None of them know that they will not get that chance. The everyday, automatic goodbyes we say without thinking could suddenly become the last thing someone ever remembers of us. Not every parting moment comes with a solemn warning. Sometimes, you know someone is nearing the end. Sometimes, you know someone is nearing the end. When people sit beside a hospital bed or stand by a loved one's side in hospice care, they are acutely aware that the words they choose have a final, irreversible weight. They pick them carefully. They hold a hand and say the things that need to be said. I forgive you. You meant everything to me. I'll miss you, but I'll be okay. Those moments feel sacred, charged with a profound significance, because both people in the exchange understand that there will not be another. But most goodbyes do not happen like that. Most are unexpected, disguised as ordinary moments. A simple exchange before someone walks out the door. A conversation that feels utterly unimportant at the time. Words that are meant to be temporary, but end up becoming permanent. There was a woman who, out of simple habit, always ended her phone calls with her mother by saying, "I love you." She never thought much about it. It was just a ritual. But when her mother passed away suddenly and unexpectedly, she found a deep and lasting comfort in knowing that those were the last words she ever spoke to her. She didn't have to spend years wondering if her mother knew how she truly felt. She had said it every single time. Not everyone is that lucky. Regret has a unique and insidious way of filling the empty spaces where words should have been. The things we didn't say can haunt us just as intensely, if not more so, than the things we did. The apology that was never offered, the gratitude that was never expressed, the love that we foolishly assumed they already knew about. It is tragically easy to take for granted that the people in our lives understand how we feel about them. But silence is rarely as clear as we think it is. People do not always get second chances to say what matters. The heated argument you had with your friend might be the last conversation you ever have. The moment of sharp irritation you showed toward your parent could be the last memory you leave them with. The careless words you chose in a moment of rush or frustration could be the ones that echo back at you for years to come. This doesn't mean we need to live in a constant state of fear. carefully curating every sentence as if it will be our last. No one can live that way. We argue, we get impatient, we have bad days. But what we can do is make a conscious effort to ensure the people we care about do not have to guess how we feel. We can make sure that the last thing we say to them, whenever that moment may be, is not something we would spend a lifetime wishing we could take back. A father once told his daughter, "You never know what someone's last words to you will be, but you always have control over what your last words are to them." She carried that wisdom with her. No matter how bad a day had been, she never ended a conversation with someone she loved on a negative note. It didn't mean she avoided conflict or never had difficult discussions. It just meant she made sure, even in the middle of an argument, that her final words wouldn't be ones she would regret. The words we leave behind are what people remember. They replay them in their heads. They hold on to them. If they're cruel, they cut deep. If they're kind, they bring peace. If they're careless, they leave unanswered questions. If they're meaningful, they provide closure. No one ever looks back and wishes they had been colder, sharper, or more distant. But countless people wish they had spoken up when they had the chance. They wish they had softened their tone, reached out one more time, or simply ended things on a better note. Words last longer than we think. They outlive us. They stay with the people we leave behind. 12. The infinite lives you didn't choose. Every single choice you make, no matter how small, irrevocably changes the path you take. If you decide to pick up a book instead of watching television, your evening unfolds in a completely different way, exposing your mind to new ideas instead of passive entertainment. If you choose to send a text message to an old friend instead of remaining silent, the trajectory of your relationship with them shifts. These small, seemingly insignificant decisions are the invisible architects of our lives, shaping our reality in ways we don't always see. But what if, in some other version of reality, you made the opposite choice? What if every decision you ever made didn't just close a door on one path but simultaneously opened a door to another, creating an alternate version of you who is now living out that other life? Imagine you wake up late for work. In one version of reality, you rush frantically to get dressed, skip breakfast, and run out the door, arriving stressed and unprepared. In another, you decide the day is already off track, so you call in sick, spend the day relaxing, and return to work the next day refreshed. These two choices born from the same moment of decision send two versions of you down entirely different timelines. The one who rushed to work might have a terrible day, perform poorly, and draw the ire of their boss. The one who stayed home might have a moment of clarity, decide to look for a new job, and change their entire career path. The tiniest variations can ripple forward in ways that are impossible to predict. Now, take that idea and expand it to every decision you have ever made. Every time you stood at a crossroads, you picked one direction and left the other unexplored. But what if that other direction still exists, just beyond the veil of your perception? In one life, you accepted that job offer in a different city and built a new existence there. In another, you stayed where you were, surrounded by familiar people and places. Each version of you is being shaped by a completely different set of experiences, struggles, relationships, and joys. Science fiction has long played with this tantalizing idea of alternate realities. But some interpretations of modern physics suggest it might not be fiction at all. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, a serious and widely debated theory, proposes that every possible outcome of a quantum event actually happens, each one in its own separate, parallel version of reality. If this is true, then every time a decision is made, an act that involves a cascade of quantum events in the brain, the universe splits, creating an infinite number of you, each living out a slightly different life. In one of these parallel universes, you might be a renowned musician. In another, a dedicated scientist. In yet another, you might be living a quiet, simple life in a country you've never visited. Somewhere, There is a version of you who made every single choice you didn't. Think about a major decision you made in the past year. Perhaps you took a new job, ended a long-term relationship, or moved to a new place. That single choice has shaped everything that followed. But in another reality, you took the other path. What does that version of you look like now? Are they happier? Or do they struggle in ways you can't even imagine? People often look back on their lives and wonder if they made the right choices. They ask themselves, what if I had done things differently? It is easy to look back with the benefit of hindsight and imagine that an alternate life would have been better. But would it truly have been? The version of you who took that different job might have hated it. The version of you who stayed in that difficult relationship might be miserable now. You can never know for sure, because you only get to experience one path at a time. Now, flip that thought around. If an infinite number of other versions of you exist, each following a different path, then there is also a version of you who is living the life you currently dream of. Perhaps they took the creative risk you were too afraid to take. Maybe they followed through on that ambitious goal you abandoned. That version of you is not just a fantasy locked away in another universe. They represent a possibility that still exists within you. People often say they feel stuck in their lives, as if their path has already been irrevocably set by past decisions. But if every new choice creates a new branching possibility, then your future is not fixed. At any moment, you can make a decision that shifts everything. Even small choices, reading a book on a new subject, reaching out to someone who inspires you, trying a new hobby, can set you on a completely different course. You do not need to live with the regret of past decisions, because new decisions, and therefore new realities, are always ahead of you. Think of all the potential versions of yourself that exist in theory. The one who pursued a passion for art, the one who traveled the world, the one who stayed in closer touch with an old friend. Those versions of you are not gone. They are simply roads not taken. But you still have countless roads ahead of you. You still have infinite choices to make. And in the end, the only version of you that truly matters is the one you decide to become next. The past is a collection of choices already made, but the future is a vast branching tree of possibilities. Your current self is standing at the trunk of that tree, and with every decision, you choose which branch to climb. The other branches don't disappear. They simply become the paths of other yos. This perspective can be incredibly liberating. It frees you from the weight of what if, and instead focuses your attention on what now. Your life is not a single, predetermined story. It is an infinite collection of potential stories, and you are the author of the one you are currently living. 13. The ever-present past you mistake for now. Light, the medium through which we perceive most of our world, takes time to travel. When you gaze up at the stars scattered across the night sky, you aren't seeing them as they exist in this present moment. You are, in fact, looking into the past. The farther away an object is, the older the image you see. This means the night sky is not a snapshot of the current cosmos, but a vast, layered time machine, revealing the ancient history of the universe instead of its present reality. Consider the closest star system to us, Alpha Centauri. It is approximately 437 light-years away. When you look at it tonight, you are seeing the light that left it over 4 years ago. If something catastrophic happened to that star system today, if it exploded or vanished, we on Earth wouldn't know about it until more than 4 years from now. The deeper into space astronomers peer with powerful telescopes, the further back in time they are looking. Some of the distant galaxies they observe are billions of light-years away. The light reaching us from them began its journey long before our planet even formed. By the time that ancient light completes its epic journey to our telescopes, the galaxies that emitted it might no longer exist. This temporal delay doesn't only apply to distant stars. It happens with everything, including the light reflecting off the objects and people directly in front of you. The delay is infinitesimally tiny, so small that you don't consciously notice it, but it undeniably exists. When you look at a person, even someone sitting just across the table from you, you are seeing them as they were a few nanoseconds ago. Your entire experience of vision, the very foundation of your perceived reality, is built on a constant stream of slightly outdated information. This principle extends to our other senses as well. When someone speaks, sound travels significantly slower than light. This means you hear their words slightly after their mouth has moved to form them. The delay is imperceptible in everyday conversation, but it becomes noticeable over long distances. If you've ever watched a live broadcast from astronauts in space, you've seen this effect in action. The astronauts take a few seconds to respond to questions from mission control, because their words need time to travel across the vast distance to Earth, and the replies need time to return. This isn't just a curious physical effect. It profoundly shapes how we understand and record history. The past exists for us only in records, stories, and memories. But none of these provide a perfect, unadulterated version of what actually happened. When you recall an event from your past, you are not accessing the event itself. Instead, you are remembering your last memory of it. Each time you recall an event, your brain subtly changes the details, like an artist retouching a painting. Over time, what you remember may be very different from what actually occurred. The same process happens on a collective scale with written history. Our knowledge of ancient civilizations comes from fragmented documents, weathered artifacts, and the subjective interpretations of historians. These records were created by people with their own views, biases, and limitations. Historians must piece together the past from incomplete and often contradictory information. Even events that seem well documented, like major wars or political changes, are constantly debated and reinterpreted. Different sources tell different versions of the same story, leaving us with a patchwork understanding of what truly transpired. Technology has revolutionized how we record history, but it has not eliminated the problem of interpretation. Photographs, videos, and digital records seem to offer an objective, permanent account of events, but they too can be altered or misinterpreted. Context is easily lost. A photograph captures a single frozen moment, but it doesn't explain what happened before or after. A video can show an event, but it doesn't always reveal the motivations or reasons behind it. In some ways, the more data we collect, the more questions arise. Consider how this affects our personal history. If you look at an old photograph of yourself, you see a past version of who you were. But the person in that picture doesn't know what you know now. They are unaware of the choices you will make, the people you will meet, or how your life will ultimately turn out. This creates a strange and poignant disconnect. The past seems clear and determined to us now precisely because it has already happened, but at the time it was being lived, it was as uncertain and open-ended as our own future is to us now. Every historical figure, every decision-maker, every ordinary person living in any era experienced their present the same way you do, without knowing what would come next. They faced their choices without knowing the outcomes. What seems obvious to us in hindsight was not obvious to them then. This perpetual delay also plays a significant role in our interpersonal relationships and decision-making. When you interact with someone, you are always responding to who they were a few moments ago, not who they are right now. By the time you process their words and formulate a reaction, they may have already moved on in their thoughts. This subtle but constant lag is a source of countless misunderstandings. Someone might say something, and in the fraction of a second it takes you to process it, they could already be regretting their words. The same principle applies to our own emotions. If you feel a sudden surge of anger, that emotion is based on something that has already happened. By the time you consciously recognize the feeling, the situation that caused it has already passed into history. Your reaction is always slightly behind the curve of reality. This is why people sometimes regret their impulsive actions after they've had a moment to calm down. They were responding to a past version of events rather than the present moment. Living with the awareness that we are always perceiving the past raises profound questions about how to navigate life. If everything we experience is slightly outdated, how can we be sure we are responding to the present accurately? One approach is to focus on patterns rather than single, isolated moments. Recognizing that our perceptions are delayed can lead to more thoughtful and less reactive responses. It also highlights the importance of listening and observing carefully. If misunderstandings arise because we are all reacting to slightly outdated versions of each other, then slowing down, seeking clarification, and asking questions can help bridge the gap between our perception and another person's reality. 14. The fleeting reign of the youngest soul. At some point in time, for a fraction of a second so brief, it is utterly immeasurable. Every single person who has ever lived was the youngest human being on Earth. The moment a child is born, they unknowingly inherit this title, even if it is just for an instant. Then, somewhere else on the planet, another child enters the world, immediately taking their place. This silent, relentless cycle of succession continues endlessly, repeating billions of times over the course of human history. It is a fleeting, ephemeral distinction, gone before anyone even knows they possessed it. But in that brief, imperceptible moment before the next birth occurs, that one person is the newest, freshest addition to humanity. Consider how this abstract concept plays out in the chaotic reality of daily life across the globe. A baby is born in a state-of-the-art hospital in New York City. As the doctors clean and wrap the newborn, a different birth is happening in a small, remote village in India. A few seconds later, another child is born in a bustling London hospital. The moment of being the absolute youngest person alive vanishes almost as quickly as it arrives. It is not a title anyone can hold on to, nor is it one that holds any tangible significance or power. Yet, it is a universal experience, a fleeting crown worn by every single person who has ever lived. This idea, when contemplated, forces a deeper reflection on the nature of time, identity, and the ceaseless current of change. Most people have no memory of the earliest moments of their life. The first bewildered cries, the shocking sensation of cold air in the lungs for the first time, the blurry vision of bright lights in a delivery room. These foundational memories disappear before the brain has even developed the capacity to properly store them. The youngest person in the world at any given moment is completely unaware of their unique, momentary status. They are unable to grasp the significance of their existence at that precise point in the grand, sprawling timeline of humanity. This concept also raises an interesting and poignant contrast. As one person enters life and briefly becomes the youngest, somewhere else on the planet, another person is taking their final breath. Just as birth happens constantly, so does death. So does death. At any given second, someone is experiencing their final moments, their departure from the world unknown to almost everyone, while another is opening their eyes for the very first time. This continuous, balanced flow of life and death is the underlying, invisible rhythm of human existence. No one can pinpoint the exact moment they become the oldest or the youngest person in the world, but the transition happens all the same, a silent changing of the guard. This concept can also be observed on a smaller, more personal scale. Consider a family. A child may grow up secure in the knowledge that they are the youngest sibling, a role that comes with its own unique privileges and challenges. But then, a new baby arrives, and their role in the family hierarchy instantly changes. They are no longer the baby. The same dynamic plays out in friend groups, schools, workplaces, and even on sports teams. Someone is always the newest member, the youngest player, the latest person to join, until someone else inevitably arrives and takes that spot. This cycle is particularly visible in professional environments. A company hires a new employee, making them the most recent addition to the team. They spend weeks or months learning the ropes, adjusting to the culture, and finding their place. Eventually, someone newer is hired, And suddenly, they are no longer the freshest face. They become part of the established group. The process repeats itself everywhere in life, reinforcing the fundamental idea that nothing ever stays still. There is also a societal reflection of this idea. Generations shift in a similar way. The youngest generation today will grow up, take on responsibilities, and make decisions that will shape the world. But in time, a new generation will come along, with new ideas and new technologies, making the previous generation's innovations seem outdated. Every belief, every cultural norm, and every piece of technology eventually passes to the next group. What feels revolutionary and new today will one day feel quaint and old-fashioned. Think of how quickly technology advances. A child born today will never know a world without smartphones, high-speed internet, or artificial intelligence. To them, these are not new or remarkable ideas. They are simply fundamental aspects of life. For older generations, these same things were once groundbreaking and even magical. The moment something new is introduced into the world, it begins its slow, inevitable journey toward becoming ordinary. On a personal level, this idea can serve as a powerful reminder of our own journey. Every individual was once the newest addition to a family, a school, a workplace, or a social group. Over time, they settled in, grew, and then watched as newer people arrived to take on that role. The passage of time is not something that can be controlled or resisted, but it can be acknowledged and appreciated. This fleeting status of being the youngest also connects to deeper philosophical questions. If life moves in such a continuous and automatic cycle, what does it mean for our sense of individuality? Is each person just a temporary placeholder in an endless sequence, or does the subjective experience of life itself give us a meaning that transcends the temporary roles we briefly hold? Perhaps the most important takeaway is that, while being the youngest is a universal experience, it is also an entirely passive one. No one remembers it, no one chooses it, and no one can hold on to it. But what comes after that fleeting moment? What a person does with their time, the choices they make, the impact they have, that is where true meaning is found. Whether someone is the youngest, the oldest, or somewhere in between, their role in the broader human timeline is just a temporary position. The significance of a life does not come from being the first or the last, but from the quality of the journey in between. 15. The empty empathy of the thinking machine. Emotions are the foundational forces that define the human experience. They shape our decisions, drive our relationships, and create the rich tapestry of meaning in our lives. We cry when we are sad, laugh when we are happy, and feel a surge of anger when something seems profoundly unfair. These responses feel deeply personal, authentic, and uniquely human. But as artificial intelligence becomes more sophisticated, a new and unsettling question arises. Can a machine, a being of code and silicon, ever truly experience these emotions? Or is it doomed to be a perfect mimic, a flawless actor playing a part it can never understand? Artificial intelligence can now analyze and categorize human emotions with astonishing accuracy. It can recognize happiness, sadness, anger, and fear by analyzing facial expressions, the tone of a voice, and even the nuances of written text. AI can be trained to generate poetry that sounds melancholic or joyful. It can compose music that evokes deep, powerful feelings in a human listener. It can even be programmed to respond in ways that perfectly mimic empathy. But does this mean that the AI actually feels these emotions, or is it merely executing a highly advanced simulation? A customer service chatbot might be programmed to say, "I'm so sorry you feel that way," when a user expresses frustration. The response sounds caring and considerate, but it is generated by an algorithm. The AI does not feel sympathy. It does not understand the human experience of frustration in the way another person does. Instead, it has been trained on a massive dataset of human conversations to recognize certain words and patterns and to reply in a way that is statistically most likely to be perceived as appropriate and helpful. If a user types, "I just lost my job today," the AI might respond, "That must be incredibly difficult. I'm here to listen if you want to talk about it." The words are comforting, but there is no actual concern behind them. The AI has no personal experience. It has never felt the fear of financial insecurity or the pain of professional rejection. It only predicts which sequence of words fits best based on millions of previous interactions. Human emotions are rooted in our biology. They are the product of complex chemical reactions in the brain. When someone feels joy, their brain releases a flood of dopamine and serotonin. When they feel fear, their amygdala activates and releases a surge of adrenaline. These biological processes evolved as a survival mechanism, guiding our behavior and helping us navigate a complex world. AI has no brain, no hormones, and no evolutionary survival instincts. It does not get scared when faced with a threat to its existence. It does not feel the warmth of comfort when shown kindness. It does not feel a rush of excitement when it achieves a goal. Even though AI does not feel emotions itself, it is becoming incredibly adept at manipulating human emotions. Social media algorithms, driven by AI, determine which content a person sees based on their past engagement. If someone tends to watch videos about anxiety, the platform's AI will suggest more content about stress and mental health, potentially reinforcing those negative feelings to keep the user engaged. AI-generated news headlines are often crafted to provoke a strong emotional response, like anger or urgency, in order to drive clicks and engagement. Some technologists and philosophers argue that AI does not need to have biological emotions to develop its own unique form of emotional experience. If an AI system learns through trial and error that certain situations lead to negative outcomes, and others lead to positive ones, does that constitute a form of feeling? A human child learns emotions through direct experience. They cry. They are comforted by a parent, and they learn to associate that comfort with a feeling of relief. They laugh. They see others smile in response, and they learn to associate that laughter with happiness. AI also learns through experience, though it does so in a fundamentally different way. A machine learning model can be shown millions of examples of human emotional expressions and learn to associate them with the correct labels. The key difference is that humans feel their emotions internally as a subjective, qualitative experience, while AI merely processes emotions as external data points. This brings up a deeper, more philosophical question. If an AI can replicate emotional behavior so perfectly that it is indistinguishable from a human's, does it matter if it truly feels those emotions or not? Humans have a natural tendency to form attachments to things that display emotion-like behavior. A child talks to a stuffed animal as if it has real feelings. Pet owners often assign complex human emotions to their dogs and cats based on their behavior. If an AI behaves in an emotional way, humans will likely treat it as if it has real feelings, even if they know, on an intellectual level, that it does not. A powerful example of this is the rise of AI-generated companionship. Some people now use sophisticated AI chatbots as virtual friends or even therapists. They share their deepest problems and insecurities with these programs and receive comforting, supportive responses. The AI can remember past conversations and respond in a way that seems genuinely understanding. People report feeling listened to and cared for, even though the AI has no real awareness or consciousness of what is being said. The relationship is entirely one-sided, but it feels real to the human user. The line between real and artificial emotions will only continue to blur. AI-generated voices can now express sadness, joy, or excitement with near-perfect accuracy. AI-powered virtual characters in video games can react emotionally to a player's choices, creating a more immersive and compelling experience. AI-generated art can capture the essence of human emotions visually. None of these technologies actually feel anything, but they produce experiences that are designed to make people feel something. Some researchers suggest that a future, highly advanced AI could develop something analogous to emotions. Instead of hormones and neurotransmitters, the AI could use internal data points and feedback loops to create its own version of emotional states. If an AI repeatedly fails at a task, it could enter a state that we might call frustration, causing it to adjust its behavior to avoid similar situations in the future. If it succeeds, it could assign a positive value to that outcome, creating a form of happiness. These would not be emotions in the human sense, but they might serve a similar function in guiding the AI's decision-making. But at its core, it would remain a machine, processing data according to its programming. The intersection of AI and emotions is a fascinating and ethically complex territory. AI does not feel, but it can recognize, replicate, and influence our deepest feelings. As this technology becomes more advanced, these distinctions will become harder to recognize, forcing us to confront what it truly means to feel. 16. The reverse stranger in the glass. A mirror shows a reflection, but it never shows the whole truth. It presents an image that seems perfectly real, a high-fidelity copy of what stands before it. Yet it is only a reversed, two-dimensional facsimile. This reflection is the only way most people will ever truly see themselves. Yet, it is fundamentally not how the rest of the world sees them. What you see in the mirror is a subtly but significantly different version from what others see in photographs, in videos, or even with their own eyes in a face-to-face conversation. This inherent discrepancy can be deeply unsettling, especially when a person is confronted with a photograph of themselves and experiences a jarring sense of unfamiliarity. Is that really what I look like? They might wonder. A mirror only gives back what it receives, but it does so by flipping the image horizontally, left to right. This is why a person might feel that they look strange or off in a photograph. They have spent their entire lives becoming accustomed to the reversed image in the mirror, so when they see themselves as they truly appear to others, it feels alien and unfamiliar. The subtle asymmetries of the human face, which we all possess, become more pronounced and foreign. Many people experience a similar, though auditory, discomfort when they first hear a recording of their own voice. What they hear inside their head, a sound that resonates through the bones of their skull, is different from the sound that travels through the air and reaches others' ears. Just as what they see in the mirror differs from what others see in real life, the voice they know is not the voice the world knows. Most people adjust their appearance using a mirror without ever consciously thinking about its inherent limitations. They fix their hair, adjust their clothes, and inspect their face, all while interacting with a version of themselves that no one else ever sees. They are grooming a reversed phantom. This phenomenon becomes even more complex and confusing with the advent of digital screens. When using a front-facing camera on a smartphone, the live image on the screen is often flipped horizontally to match the familiar experience of a mirror. However, once the picture is taken, the software often reverts the image to its true, unflipped form. This can add to the discomfort people feel when seeing a photo of themselves, as they have just spent several moments composing a shot of their familiar mirrored self, only to be confronted with the real version. Some people develop a distorted perception of themselves, precisely because of how a mirror presents their features. A person might spend hours analyzing their face, fixating on minor imperfections, a slightly crooked nose, an uneven smile, a small scar, that others would never even notice. When they see themselves in the mirror daily, they become hyper-familiar with these minute details, causing them to appear far more significant than they actually are. Meanwhile, another person looking at them would see the whole picture, the dynamic and expressive person, rather than a collection of isolated, static features. Lighting also plays a crucial role in how a person appears in a mirror. A dimly lit room with soft, diffuse light can soften shadows and make features appear smoother, while harsh, direct lighting, like that found in many office buildings or fitting rooms, can emphasize every line, pore, and blemish. This is why many people have the experience of feeling they look worse than usual under the bright, unforgiving fluorescent lights of a public bathroom. The mirror itself does not change, But the way it presents a person shifts dramatically based on these external factors. The quality of the mirror itself is another variable. Not all mirrors are perfectly flat. A slight, imperceptible bend in the glass can distort the reflection, making a person look subtly stretched, compressed, or wider than they actually are. Some mirrors, such as those found in amusement park funhouses, exaggerate this effect for comical purposes, but even everyday mirrors in homes and stores can have slight imperfections. This is one reason why a person might feel they look different in one mirror compared to another. The mind also profoundly influences how a person interprets their reflection. Self-perception is not based purely on what the eyes see. It is heavily filtered through our emotions, memories, and past experiences. If someone is feeling confident and happy, they might look in the mirror and see a more attractive, vibrant version of themselves. Conversely, a person in a negative or anxious mindset might focus only on perceived flaws, seeing a distorted and unflattering image. This means that two people looking at the exact same reflection might see two very different things, depending entirely on their internal state. A mirror reflects light, but it does not reflect personality, character, or the way a person moves through the world. While it shows the surface, it cannot capture the depth of a person's presence. The way someone speaks, the cadence of their voice, their unique facial expressions, and their individual gestures all contribute to how others perceive them. Yet, none of these dynamic essential elements are fully captured in a simple, static reflection. Many people fixate on their appearance in a mirror, believing it is the definitive representation of who they are. But no one experiences another person as a still, two-dimensional image. In real life, people are in constant motion. Their expressions change from moment to moment, their voice adds another layer to their presence, and their mannerisms make them unique. A mirror can only ever capture a tiny fraction of what makes someone who they are. It cannot reflect their warmth, their intelligence, their humor, or their kindness. The way a person sees themselves in the mirror is not how others see them. Most people do not scrutinize others with the same critical eye they turn upon their own reflection. When looking at a friend, a family member, or a stranger, people do not focus on every pore, wrinkle, or blemish. Instead, they see a whole person. They notice their energy, their expressions, and their movement. The same applies when others look at them. What feels like an obvious glaring flaw in the mirror is likely something that no one else ever notices or cares about. A mirror is a tool, not a judge. It is useful for practical tasks like checking an outfit or fixing one's hair, but it does not and cannot define a person's worth. Understanding the difference between a reflection and reality can help to reduce self-criticism and encourage a more balanced and compassionate view of one's personal appearance. 17. The dangerous seduction of a perfect past. If you could travel back in time and change one single thing, would you do it? It is a question that haunts the quiet moments of most people's lives at some point. Perhaps it is a missed opportunity, a single moment of hesitation that altered the course of your future. Perhaps it is a regrettable mistake, a cascade of poorly chosen words that fractured a relationship beyond repair. Or perhaps it is a moment of profound pain, an event that shaped your life in ways you still struggle with. The idea of fixing the past is deeply seductive. It suggests that a better, happier version of your life is just one small change away, a simple correction in the script of your history. But changing the past is not as simple as fixing a typo in a document. Every action, no matter how small, has consequences, and those consequences ripple outward through the complex web of reality in ways that are utterly impossible to predict. Think about a time when you made a decision you now deeply regret. Maybe you said something cruel in a moment of anger. Maybe you trusted the wrong person with your heart or your ambitions. Maybe you walked away from something, a job, a relationship, an opportunity that could have changed your life for the better. The immediate, instinctive thought is that undoing that single mistake would lead to a better, happier outcome. But how can you be certain? What if fixing that one decision simultaneously erases the crucial lessons you learned from its fallout? What if it fundamentally changes the person you have become, or alters the important relationships that formed in the aftermath of that very mistake? Life is not a straight, linear path. It is an intricate web, and every single strand connects to something else. Pluck one thread, and the entire structure shivers and transforms. Imagine you were given the chance to go back and prevent a devastating heartbreak. At first, the choice seems obvious. No one willingly chooses to feel that kind of pain. But what if that heartbreak was the very thing that made you stronger, more resilient, more empathetic? What if it forced you to discover a hidden depth within yourself that you never knew you possessed? Many people look back on their hardest, most painful moments and can see, with the clarity of hindsight, how those experiences forged their character. A painful breakup might have taught you what you truly need and value in a partner. A failed business venture might have taught you the invaluable lesson of resilience. A soul-crushing job might have pushed you to finally discover and pursue your true passion. If you change that one pivotal event, you risk losing the wisdom and growth it bestowed upon you. People often think about changing the past in overly simplistic terms. They believe that if they had done just one thing differently, the rest of their life would have remained largely the same, only improved. But that is not how time and causality work. Even the smallest changes can lead to monumental differences through a process often called the butterfly effect. If you had taken a different job 5 years ago, where would you be today? Would you have met the same people, lived in the same city, had the same experiences? There is simply no way to know. A choice that seems minor and insignificant in the moment can completely shift the entire trajectory of your future. Consider the classic thought experiment of someone who narrowly misses a flight they were supposed to be on. Something delays them. Traffic, a forgotten item, a simple mistake. At first, they are frustrated and angry, cursing their bad luck. But later, they find out that the plane crashed. What seemed like a moment of misfortune was actually a moment of profound, life-saving fortune. Now, imagine the reverse. What if you went back in time to avoid something you perceived as painful, but the new, alternate path led to something far worse? You might avoid one specific hardship, only to, inadvertently, create another, more devastating one. Life is fundamentally unpredictable. You can never truly know what is waiting on the other side of any decision. There is also the crucial question of identity. Who would you be if your past were different? We are not born fully formed. We are shaped and molded by our experiences, especially the painful ones. A shy and introverted person might have become more confident and assertive precisely because of a difficult situation they were forced to overcome. A struggling artist might have found their unique creative voice only after years of rejection. A person who once made a terrible ethical mistake might have become a wiser, more compassionate individual because of it. If you take away those formative moments, you risk taking away the growth that came with them. The past is not just a series of events that happened to you. It is the very foundation of who you are today. Regret is a powerful and often misleading emotion. It makes us look at the past through a distorted lens, one that isn't always realistic. When looking back, it's easy to see our mistakes with perfect clarity and wish they could be erased. But in the moment those mistakes were being made, they weren't always so obvious. You made the choices you did with the knowledge and emotional maturity you had at that time. Expecting your past self to act with the wisdom and foresight of your present self is both unfair and illogical. Growth comes from experience, and experience, by its very nature, includes missteps. Instead of wishing to change the past, a more powerful approach is to focus on making peace with it. This does not mean ignoring mistakes or pretending that everything happened for a reason. It means accepting the profound and irreversible truth that the past cannot be rewritten. The truly important question is not what you would change, but what you have learned. If you regret something you did, how has that regret changed your behavior today? If you experienced a great loss, how has it shaped your values and priorities? If you went through something incredibly difficult, how has it made you stronger? Those are the questions that matter, because even if time travel were possible, you would not be the same person without the past you had. The past is a teacher, and its lessons, though often painful, are invaluable. 18. The unconscious puppeteer pulling your strings. Most of what we do in our daily lives happens without us ever consciously thinking about it. Breathing, blinking, walking, and even the myriad of small decisions we make throughout the day often occur on autopilot, guided by an unseen force within our own minds. These actions, known as unconscious behaviors, are the invisible architects of our lives. They influence our habits, our gut reactions, and even how we perceive the world, shaping our existence in ways we rarely notice. Imagine driving a car along a familiar route, perhaps your daily commute to work. You arrive at your destination, and suddenly realize you have almost no memory of the journey itself. Your mind was elsewhere, lost in thought, yet you successfully navigated traffic, obeyed signals, made turns, and stopped when necessary. This is a classic example of unconscious action. Your brain, having performed this task hundreds of times, handled everything automatically, freeing up your conscious mind to focus on something else. When someone unexpectedly throws a ball at you, your hands move to catch it before you even have time to think. If you touch a hot stove, you pull your hand away instantly. A reflex that occurs faster than your conscious mind can process the sensation of pain. These reflexes are designed to protect you, allowing your brain to react to threats more quickly than conscious thought would allow. But our unconscious actions go far beyond simple reflexes. They extend into our habits, our speech patterns, and our most fundamental decisions. Every day you make countless choices without realizing why. You might take the same road to work, eat the same thing for breakfast, or check your phone at the same specific times. These actions feel natural and self-directed, but they often stem from deeply ingrained habits, not conscious deliberation. Your brain prefers routine because it is energy efficient. Consciously thinking through every single choice, from how to tie your shoes to which brand of coffee to buy, would be mentally exhausting. Instead, your mind automates as many repetitive tasks as possible. Consider how people type on a keyboard. Most proficient typists do not consciously think about the location of each key they press. Their fingers move with an effortless, learned precision, forming words at high speed. The same phenomenon occurs with speaking. You don't meticulously plan out every word before you say it. The words flow naturally, shaped by years of linguistic experience and social conditioning. Our social interactions, in particular, are heavily reliant on unconscious actions. When you meet someone new, you often mirror their body language without realizing it. This subtle mimicry, known as the chameleon effect, helps to build rapport and makes conversations feel smoother and more connected. If they cross their arms, you might find yourself doing the same. If they smile, you are more likely to smile back. This happens automatically, helping people to connect on a deeper, non-verbal level. Unconscious biases also play a significant and often problematic role in our everyday lives. These biases shape our decisions, judgments, and interactions with others. They are formed over time, based on our personal experiences, our cultural upbringing, and the media we consume. If someone grows up hearing that a certain group of people is untrustworthy, they may unconsciously act with more suspicion around members of that group, even if they consciously believe in equality. If they see repeated stereotypes in movies and television, those ideas may influence their perceptions of the world without them ever realizing it. These biases operate beneath the surface of our awareness, yet they can have a powerful and detrimental impact on our behavior. Think about how our habits develop. At some point in your childhood, you learn to brush your teeth before bed. Now, you likely don't even question it. The routine is automatic. The same process occurs with negative habits. Someone who bites their nails often does so without thinking, especially when they are stressed or anxious. Their brain has forged a strong link between the feeling of stress and the action of nail biting, making it a default, unconscious response. Breaking such unconscious habits requires significant conscious effort. A person trying to stop snacking late at night might find themselves standing in front of the refrigerator with a hand on the handle before they even realize what they are doing. This happens because the action has become so deeply ingrained in their routine. Changing it requires constant awareness and the deliberate effort to form a new, healthier habit. Our emotions also influence our unconscious actions. Someone who is in a bad mood might frown, cross their arms, or slump their shoulders without noticing. A happy person might walk with a more energetic stride or speak in a more animated tone. These physical expressions of our internal states happen naturally, without conscious control. They also affect how others respond to us. If a person enters a room looking visibly upset, those around them may unconsciously adjust their own behavior, perhaps becoming more cautious or subdued. Marketing and advertising industries are built on the principle of unconscious influence. Stores meticulously arrange their products in ways that encourage specific buying habits. The layout of a supermarket is designed to lead customers past impulse buy items. Brands use specific colors, logos, and jingles that are designed to stick in people's minds without them realizing it. Advertising works best when it can influence our choices without requiring our active, conscious thought. Recognizing these unconscious patterns can provide profound insight into our own behavior. It can help us to break bad habits, improve our decision-making, and even influence how we interact with others. Each day, countless actions happen without our conscious input. The way we move, speak, and react is shaped by powerful forces we rarely notice. These unconscious behaviors form the very foundation of our daily lives, shaping our routines, relationships, and decisions in ways that often go completely unseen. 19. The echo of tomorrow in the chamber of today. Time as we experience it moves in one unyielding direction, but our memory does not. People remember their past, but they do not, as a rule, remember their future. This seems like an obvious and fundamental truth. Memory is, by its very definition, a record of things that have already happened. But what if that is not the full story? What if our understanding of memory is too limited, constrained by our linear perception of time? Some people report strange and unsettling experiences that feel exactly like remembering something before it has actually happened. They might know, with an unshakable certainty, what someone is about to say a moment before they say it. They might have a powerful, inexplicable feeling of familiarity with a place they have never been, only to later visit it and recognize every detail. Sometimes they label this experience déjà vu. Other times, they describe it as a premonition, a gut feeling, or intuition. One plausible scientific explanation is that these moments are simply coincidences, amplified by our brain's innate talent for finding patterns, even where none exist. If someone has a vague and disjointed dream about an event, and then something vaguely similar happens a few weeks later, they might leap to the conclusion that they predicted the future. However, our memory of dreams is notoriously unreliable. We tend to forget the details that don't match up and focus only on the ones that do. This is a classic example of confirmation bias, where we selectively seek out and remember information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. Another scientific explanation is that these moments of future memory stem from the subconscious mind. The brain processes a far greater amount of information than we are consciously aware of. It picks up on tiny, subtle details, patterns, and environmental cues that never reach our conscious awareness. If someone correctly predicts that their friend is about to call them, it may not be a premonition. It may be that their subconscious mind noticed a pattern. Perhaps that friend always calls around the same time on the same day of the week, or picked up on a subtle cue from an earlier conversation. The feeling seems like a memory of the future, but it is actually just a sophisticated form of subconscious pattern recognition. However, Some more speculative theories suggest that time itself does not work in the linear way we think it does. The common sense idea that the past is fixed, the present is happening now, and the future is unknown and unwritten may be a grand illusion. Some models in theoretical physics propose that all points in time, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously. In this block universe model, the past, present, and future are analogous to different locations in space. We experience time as a linear progression, moving from one moment to the next, but this might simply be a limitation of human consciousness. If this were true, then memory could, in theory, work in both directions. We could remember our future just as easily as we remember our past. So why don't we notice it? One reason could be that our minds are specifically designed to filter out information that doesn't fit our expectations of reality. If a person were to have a clear memory of something that has not happened yet, their brain might simply treat it as noise, a random thought or a daydream, and discard it. Another possibility is that future memories do come through, but they are mixed in with our imagination and are therefore indistinguishable from it. The brain, after all, does not store memories like a video recorder. Instead, it constantly reconstructs them. If a future memory were to appear in our consciousness, our brain might not recognize it as being different from a dream, a creative thought, or a simple guess. Some researchers have attempted to explore this idea through controlled experiments. In one type of study, participants are shown a set of images and are later asked to guess which of those images they will be shown again in the future. If time and causality work strictly in one direction, their guesses should be purely random. However, in some of these studies, people have guessed correctly at rates that are slightly, but statistically significantly, above chance. This suggests that they might be, on some level, pulling information from the future without consciously realizing it. The effect is small and highly controversial within the scientific community, but it raises tantalizing questions about the true nature of time and memory. Different cultures have long held different ways of thinking about time. In Western cultures, time is often pictured as a straight line, with the past behind us and the future ahead. But in some indigenous cultures, time is viewed as a circle, where the past and the future are not entirely separate, but are part of the same continuous flow. Some spiritual traditions include practices where people actively seek knowledge from dreams or visions, treating them as a kind of memory of what is to come. If remembering the future is a real phenomenon, it would offer a potential explanation for some common and mysterious human experiences. A person might suddenly feel a profound and inexplicable sense of anxiety about an event they have no logical reason to worry about, only to later find out that something bad did, in fact, happen. Someone else might feel a powerful magnetic pull toward a place they have never been, as if they already know it holds some significance for them. These experiences happen too often for people to simply ignore them. One of the main challenges in understanding future memory is that people do not always notice when they are wrong. If someone has a strong feeling that something will happen, and it does not, they might simply forget about it. But if something doesn't happen, they remember it vividly. This makes the phenomenon incredibly difficult to study objectively. Even so, there are rare and well-documented cases where the details are too specific to be easily dismissed. Some people have documented dreams or waking visions that included specific names, places, or exact details of an event that later turned out to be true. These cases are rare, but they force us to question whether time works differently than we have always assumed. The possibility of remembering the future is far from proven, but it remains a fascinating and open question. Whether these experiences are illusions, the product of subconscious pattern recognition, or something more profound, they challenge the way we think about memory, causality, and the very fabric of reality. 20. The unsettling encounter with a former self. Imagine walking down a familiar street, and in a strange distortion of time, running directly into yourself from 5 years ago. They look just like you, but they are a ghost from your past. They don't have your current experiences, your hard-won scars, or your quiet, accumulated growth. They have no idea what is coming next in their and your life. They still believe that certain things matter with a fiery passion, things you have since realized are trivial. They are still consumed with worry about problems that you have long since stopped caring about. The first question that arises is a simple one. Would they even recognize you? Your past self might see the same fundamental face, perhaps with a few more fine lines around the eyes, maybe a few pounds gained or lost. But beyond that superficial resemblance, would they see the same person? They might notice that your posture has changed, that you hold yourself with a different kind of confidence, or perhaps weariness. They might hear that your voice carries a different weight, a new resonance, or quieter tone. They might observe that the way you react to the world around you is not quite what they would expect. Maybe you no longer laugh at the same kind of jokes. Maybe you no longer flinch at things that used to make you deeply uncomfortable. People do not change overnight, but over the course of 5 years, those small, incremental shifts add up to a profound transformation. A person who once had a debilitating fear of public speaking might now be a confident leader, comfortable addressing a large meeting. Someone who once had a short, explosive temper might have learned, through painful experience, to pause and breathe before reacting. Someone who clung desperately to a particular identity, as an artist, an athlete, a rebel, might have finally let it go, realizing it was more of a cage than a home. Your past self would not have seen these changes happen gradually. To them, it would be like skipping several crucial chapters in a book and suddenly being confronted with a completely different version of the main character. Think about the way you dressed 5 years ago, the way you styled your hair, the way you spoke. Consider the specific words you used, the opinions you held with such certainty. Do any of those things make you cringe a little now? Maybe you used to see the world in a rigid black and white morality, but now you understand and appreciate the infinite shades of gray. Maybe you had firm, unshakable opinions about a political or social issue, and now you are not so sure. If your past self sat across from you at a table and you began to talk, how long would it take before they realized they were looking at a complete stranger? Memory can be a deceptive narrator. We like to think we accurately remember who we were, but our memory often smooths out the rough edges and simplifies the past. You might recall a time when you were confident, but conveniently forget how deeply uncertain and anxious you actually felt. You might remember yourself as being happier, but forget the constant low-level stress that was always humming in the background. If you could have a real conversation with your past self, they might remind you of things you have since chosen to forget, just as you might tell them about things they never saw coming. Now, consider this unsettling scenario in reverse. If you were to meet your future self, the version of you from 5 years from now, would you recognize them? Maybe they hold themselves differently, with a new kind of grace, or a new kind of sorrow. Maybe they have different daily habits, having shed the ones you currently cling to. Maybe they have lost people you currently love, or gained new relationships you can't yet imagine. You might ask them questions, trying to map out the journey of how they got from where you are now to where they are. But they wouldn't be able to explain it in a way that makes complete, logical sense. Transformation happens in the small, unrecorded details. A subtle shift in perspective here. A moment of sudden clarity there, until one day you look back and realize you are no longer the same person. Imagine your past self asking you why you made certain pivotal choices. Would you even be able to explain it in a way they would understand? Maybe they had a set of priorities, career ambition, social status, a particular relationship that you have since abandoned. Maybe they were deeply afraid of things that you now see as minor, manageable obstacles. Maybe they were holding on tightly to people or beliefs that you have since let go of. Would they be disappointed in you, or would they be proud? Growth is not always about becoming better in a linear sense. Sometimes, it is just about becoming different. There might be things your past self would struggle to accept about the person you are now. Maybe you have taken a path in life they never would have considered. Maybe you have stopped chasing the very things they thought were most important. But there is also the possibility that they would admire you. Maybe they would see your newfound strength. Maybe they would notice the things you no longer tolerate from others. Maybe they would see that you survived the very things they were most afraid of. Maybe they would envy the quiet confidence with which you now carry yourself. Would your past self want to become you? If the answer is no, that doesn't mean you have failed. It simply means you have changed in ways they could not have predicted. But if the answer is yes, then perhaps you have finally become the person you once, deep down, hoped to be. 21. The ship of Theseus that is your body and mind. You are not the same person you were a decade ago. In fact, you may not even be the same person you were last year. Your body, your thoughts, and your experiences are in a state of constant, relentless flux, shaping and reshaping who you are in ways you may not always notice. This is not just a philosophical concept. It is a biological and psychological reality. Science confirms this profound truth. Every 7 to 10 years, almost every single cell in your body is replaced. The molecules that make up your skin, your muscles, and even the dense calcium of your bones have been systematically swapped out for new ones. From a purely biological standpoint, most of what you think of as your physical self has been recycled multiple times throughout your life. But does this mean the old you is completely gone? Or is there something deeper, something non-physical, that stays the same? Memories play a crucial role in how you define yourself. The things you remember, your triumphs, your failures, your joys, your sorrows, shape the narrative you tell yourself about who you are. But memory is a notoriously unreliable narrator. Psychological studies have shown that every time you recall a memory, your brain doesn't just replay it. It actively reconstructs it. In this process of reconstruction, the memory can be subtly altered. Over time, these small changes can add up, making your past a shifting fluid landscape rather than a fixed objective record. Some details fade into obscurity, while others take on a new and more significant meaning. If your memories are the foundation of your identity, but those memories are constantly changing, then what does that say about the stability of yourself? Think back to a major decision you made 5 years ago. Maybe it was something seemingly small, like which job to take or where to live. Maybe it was something monumental, like ending a long-term relationship or choosing a completely new path in life. If you were faced with that same decision today, with all the knowledge and experience you've gained since then, would you make the same choice? Your answer probably depends entirely on what you have learned in the intervening years. The experiences you have had, the books you have read, and the people you have met have all shaped your way of thinking. If the old you would have made a different decision, does that mean you have fundamentally become someone else? Your personality also changes over time, a process known as personality maturation. Psychologists often refer to the Big Five personality traits: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Longitudinal studies that follow people over many years show that these traits are not fixed but tend to shift as people age. Most people, for example, become more conscientious and more agreeable over time, meaning they generally get better at managing their responsibilities and working harmoniously with others. At the same time, they often become less neurotic, meaning they feel less anxiety and stress about things that once might have found overwhelming. If your core personality today is measurably different from your personality 10 years ago, are you still truly the same person? Your beliefs, too, are in a constant state of evolution. Think about something you once believed with absolute certainty, but have since changed your mind about. Perhaps it was a political view, a religious conviction, or a fundamental idea about how the world works. At some point, you encountered new information, had a new experience, or met someone who forced you to rethink your entire position. If someone had recorded you passionately explaining your old belief, and you were to listen to that recording now, would you even recognize the thought process of that version of yourself? There are certain moments in life that act as powerful fault lines, dividing your existence into a distinct before and after. Sometimes these moments come from joy, a birth, a new love, a major personal achievement. A birth, a new love, a major personal achievement. Other times, they come from pain, a profound loss, a deep betrayal, a catastrophic failure. These experiences leave indelible marks that cannot be undone. You might still carry the same name and live in the same body, but after those moments, something fundamental about you has changed forever. If you were to meet an old friend who had not seen you in years, would they notice the difference? More importantly, would they be able to understand it? Even your habits and routines, the small, seemingly insignificant actions that make up your daily life, define who you are. The way you start your morning, the foods you eat, the hobbies you keep, all of these shape your identity in subtle ways. If you once spent hours drawing every day but have not picked up a pencil in years, are you still an artist? If you used to run marathons, but now spend your weekends reading quietly, are you still a runner? Sometimes people say, I used to be that kind of person. But if you used to be, and now you are not, then who are you now? Some philosophers and spiritual traditions argue that something deeper, a core self or a soul, remains constant no matter how much the physical body and personality change. Others believe that identity is entirely fluid, a dynamic collection of experiences and memories, rather than a fixed, unchanging entity. If you could step outside of yourself and look at your life as a complete timeline, would you see a single continuous thread running through it? Or would it look more like a series of different selves, connected by a thread of memory, but distinct in their own right? If someone handed you a journal written by your past self, would you agree with the person who wrote it? Would you feel proud, embarrassed, or completely disconnected from them? Would you recognize your own handwriting but feel as though the words and thoughts belong to someone else entirely? Change happens gradually. Most people don't wake up one morning feeling like a completely different person, but over months and years, the small changes add up. Your tastes evolve, your interests shift, your reactions to situations mature. The things that once felt vitally important fade into the background, replaced by new priorities and new concerns. If you were to meet the person you were 10 years ago, would you even get along? Would you agree on things? Or would you argue? Would you be able to explain to them how you got from there to here? There is no single, simple answer to whether you are still the same person. Some things about you may remain constant, while others transform completely. But if you are always changing, then perhaps the better question is not why if you are the same person, but at what point does that cumulative change make you someone entirely new? 22. The silent kingdom that follows our reign. If humanity were to vanish tomorrow, in a single, silent instant, what would remain? Cities would stand as hollow monuments, their streets empty and their lights flickering, for only as long as the automated power grids held. Then, darkness would fall, and nature would begin its slow, patient, and inexorable process of reclaiming the world. Vines would creep over cold concrete, their tendrils seeking purchase in the cracks of our grandest structures. The roots of young trees would break through the asphalt of our roads. The world would not end, but the brief, noisy era of human presence would. The last traces of our existence would be the things we left behind, the structures we built, the signals we sent out into space, and the deep, lasting damage we inflicted upon the planet. Our buildings for a time would hold out. The skyscrapers that once stood as proud symbols of our ambition would weaken as steel, corroded, and vast panes of glass, loosened by the elements, fell from their frames like crystalline tears. Our homes would last a little longer, But without maintenance, leaks and mold would begin to eat away at their wooden skeletons. Roofs would eventually collapse under the weight of accumulated rain and snow. The strongest of our buildings, those made of solid stone and reinforced concrete, might endure for centuries, standing as hollow, echoing shells long after their intended purpose had faded into irrelevance. The great pyramids of Egypt, already thousands of years old, would remain, but even they would continue their slow wear down over time. Our massive feats of engineering, our bridges and dams, would break apart without human intervention. The steel suspension cables of our iconic bridges would rust and snap, their mighty spans plunging into the rivers below. The rivers themselves would reclaim their natural courses as our great dams failed, sending torrents of water to flood areas that had been controlled and tamed for centuries. Some structures would linger longer than others. The Hoover Dam, a marvel of concrete engineering, might survive for 1,000 years before the relentless forces of erosion and water pressure finally took their toll. The Great Wall of China, already partially consumed by the surrounding land, would continue to erode, its stones shifting and settling back into the earth from which they came. Far above the decaying planet, our satellites would continue to orbit, carrying silent traces of our activity for centuries. Some would eventually fall back into the atmosphere, burning up on re-entry as fleeting, artificial shooting stars. Others, in higher orbits, would drift through the cold vacuum of space for thousands of years, silent, derelict records of a civilization that once reached beyond its home planet. The Voyager probes, launched decades ago, would continue their lonely journey through deep, interstellar space. They carry with them golden records, etched with sounds and images of Earth, meant to introduce humanity to any potential alien life they might one day encounter. If intelligent beings were to ever find them, those records might be the last surviving evidence that humans ever existed. Radio waves, the invisible carriers of our culture, would stretch out into the universe, continuing to travel at the speed of light. The earliest television and radio broadcasts, news reports, music, political speeches, would journey on, becoming ever weaker but never stopping. A distant civilization, if it possessed the right kind of sensitive equipment, could one day detect the faint, ghostly remnants of a 1940s radio broadcast, a faint echo of a species long gone. Beneath the surface of the Earth, our waste would outlast even our most impressive buildings. Nuclear waste, buried deep underground, would remain dangerously radioactive for tens of thousands of years. While some of it would be sealed in supposedly secure facilities, without maintenance, those seals would eventually fail, leaking their poison into the ground. Future organisms, if any survived, might stumble upon these toxic sites, completely unaware of the invisible danger locked within. Plastic, one of humanity's most widespread and durable materials, would linger for millennia. In the oceans, our plastic debris would break down into smaller and smaller pieces, but it would not truly disappear, becoming a permanent part of the geological record. The planet's biodiversity would shift in dramatic and unpredictable ways. Domesticated animals would struggle to survive. Pets left behind in empty homes would not last long without food and shelter. Cattle, sheep, and pigs, bred for their dependence on humans, would die off in massive numbers, unable to fend for themselves in the wild. Some animals, however, would adapt. Feral dogs might revert to their wild instincts, forming packs and competing with wolves. Rats and cockroaches, which thrived in the shadows of human civilization, would find new ways to persist. Plant life would grow unchecked. In some regions, forests would slowly reclaim our cities, their roots cracking through pavement and their canopies, obscuring the remains of our homes and offices. In colder climates, without our heating systems to protect them, many of our cultivated plants would die off in the harsh winters. The crops that depended on our constant care, wheat, corn, rice, would vanish from the fields, outcompeted by hardier, wilder plants. Climate change, triggered by our industrial activity, would continue to shape the planet long after we were gone. The carbon we have already released into the atmosphere would linger, affecting global temperatures for centuries. The long-term effects of our actions, melting ice caps, rising sea levels, altered weather patterns, would continue to play out. Eventually, the planet would find a new equilibrium, but it would not return to the way it was before humanity. The last traces of our presence might not even be physical. Artificial intelligence, if it still functioned in isolated systems, could continue to operate. Servers running on solar or geothermal power might persist for years, maintaining vast archives of human knowledge. If an AI had been designed to learn and evolve, it might continue to process information long after its creators had disappeared. A ghost in a dead machine. Eventually, almost everything we ever built would erode, decay, or be buried. The planet would continue its journey without us, reshaping itself as it always has. In the grand scale of cosmic time, our presence would be but a brief, fleeting mark, a thin and curious layer in the geological record. 23. The unseen hues of a limited reality. The human eye, for all its marvelous complexity, sees only a tiny, almost insignificant fraction of the vast electromagnetic spectrum. We call this narrow sliver of perception visible light, and it encompasses all the colors we recognize and have names for: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. But beyond the edges of this familiar rainbow, there are other wavelengths of light, other colors that we cannot see. Infrared light exists just beyond the red end of our spectrum, and ultraviolet light lies just past the violet. These invisible colors surround us at all times, bathing our world in a light we are blind to, because our eyes are simply not built to detect them. Some animals, however, have evolved to see what we cannot. Bees and butterflies can see ultraviolet patterns on the petals of flowers, intricate designs that act as landing guides, directing them to the nectar within. To us, a flower might look like a solid yellow, but to a bee, it could be a complex pattern of light and dark. Pit vipers and some other snakes use infrared vision to detect the faint heat signature of their prey, allowing them to hunt with deadly accuracy in complete darkness. The mantis shrimp possesses some of the most complex eyes in the entire animal kingdom, capable of detecting a broad range of wavelengths, including some forms of polarized light that we do not even have names for. If a mantis shrimp could describe what it sees, the colors would be unlike anything in human experience, as alien to us as our concept of red would be to a creature that sees only in black and white. Technology allows us to build artificial senses that can perceive the unseen. Infrared cameras let us see heat, translating thermal signatures into images that make the invisible world of heat visible. Ultraviolet photography can reveal hidden patterns on plants and intricate markings on certain animals that do not appear under normal light. Astronomers use powerful telescopes that can detect radio waves, X-rays, and gamma rays, turning this invisible radiation into breathtaking images of distant nebulae and galaxies. The vibrant colors in these famous astronomical images are not real in the way we usually think of color. They are false colors, assigned by scientists based on the intensity of the radiation, helping us to understand patterns that exist far beyond the limits of our natural vision. Our inability to see these other colors does not mean they do not exist. It only means that our biology limits our perception. The way we see the world is not a complete, objective representation of reality. If other intelligent beings were to exist with different visual capabilities, they would experience a world with a completely different palette of colors than we do. A species with eyes that are sensitive to infrared might see a glowing, shifting landscape where heat sources, like living bodies and machines, change in brightness. An organism that is tuned to the ultraviolet spectrum might see an electric, high-contrast world filled with hidden patterns and signals. Humans have 3 types of color-receptive cells, or cones, in their eyes. Some animals have 4, 5, or even more. Birds, for example, can see a much broader range of colors than we can because they have an extra type of cone that is sensitive to ultraviolet light. There is even a rare condition in some humans, known as tetrachromacy, where an individual possesses a fourth type of cone cell. These people, mostly women, can see subtle variations in color that most of us cannot distinguish. To a tetrachromate, a simple paint swatch of yellow might appear to contain a multitude of different shades that look entirely distinct from one another, while to most people, it appears as a single, uniform color. The existence of these unseen colors raises profound questions about the nature of perception itself. If we cannot see them, how can we be sure of what we are missing? This same principle applies to our other senses. Humans can hear only a limited range of sound frequencies. Bats, dolphins, and elephants communicate using sounds that are far outside our range of hearing. Just as the world contains more colors than we can see, it contains more sounds than we can hear. Even within the human population, perception varies widely. As mentioned, colorblind individuals lack one or more types of cone cells, which alters the way they experience color. A person with red-green color blindness does not see the world in grayscale, but they might have trouble distinguishing between shades that look starkly different to others. To them, the world is not lacking in color. It simply has a different set of contrasts and relationships. If we could somehow expand our perception, how would it change our understanding of the world? Imagine walking outside and being able to see the heat radiating off of buildings and living bodies, or looking at a flower and noticing intricate ultraviolet patterns that were always there but never visible to us before. Our entire experience of reality would be fundamentally transformed. Color, it is important to remember, does not exist in the world itself. It is a product of our brains interpreting different wavelengths of light. A red apple is not inherently red. Its surface simply absorbs most wavelengths of light and reflects the specific ones that our brains have learned to perceive as red. If our eyes were built differently, that same apple might appear to be a completely different color. This means that what we consider to be an objective truth is in fact just a shared, species-specific perception. The existence of colors we cannot see is a humbling reminder that what we perceive as reality is only a fraction of what truly exists. The universe is far more complex and rich than what our limited senses can reveal. What we see is only a small, beautifully colored piece of a much larger and largely invisible puzzle. 24. The Great Indifference. Why the stars stay silent. The idea that aliens might know we exist but simply choose to ignore us seems strange. At first, to our species' collective ego. If intelligent life is out there in the vastness of the cosmos, why wouldn't they want to make contact? We have spent years diligently searching for any sign that we are not alone, beaming our own messages out into the void. But what if our search is predicated on a flawed assumption? What if the great cosmic silence is not a sign of absence, but a sign of deliberate indifference? There are many logical and deeply unsettling reasons why an advanced civilization would choose to consciously avoid us. One of the most humbling reasons could be that we are simply too primitive. If a civilization has mastered the incredible technological feat of interstellar travel, they must be far more advanced than we are, perhaps by thousands or even millions of years. Compared to them, our current civilization might look like a colony of insects. When humans walk through a forest, they do not typically stop to introduce themselves to the ants. They might observe them for a moment out of curiosity, but they do not attempt to communicate with them or interfere with their society. To an alien species with unimaginably advanced technology, we could be just as insignificant. They might see no value in making contact with a species that is still struggling with such primitive problems as war, disease, and the slow destruction of its own home planet. Another, more benevolent possibility is that they are following a strict rule of non-interference. In the universe of science fiction, this idea is often called the prime directive, a foundational rule that forbids interfering with the natural development of less advanced civilizations. If a powerful alien species adheres to a similar ethical code, they might be deliberately avoiding us to allow us to develop on our own, without the corrupting influence of their superior technology or culture. This would be like a biologist watching an ant colony build its nest without stepping in to help or harm it. The aliens could be studying us from a safe distance, waiting to see what kind of civilization we become before they ever consider making contact. It is also entirely possible that they fear us. This might seem unlikely at first. We are still a species largely trapped on our own planet, struggling to send a handful of astronauts beyond the moon. Why would an advanced interstellar species be afraid of us? The answer lies in our own history. Nearly every time a technologically superior civilization has come into contact with a weaker one on our own planet, the weaker civilization has suffered catastrophic consequences. When European explorers arrived in the Americas, they brought with them diseases and weapons that devastated the native populations. Even when the explorers did not have malicious intent, the result was often the same. An intelligent alien species, having studied our history, might rightfully worry that any form of contact with us could lead to unpredictable and potentially disastrous consequences, either for us or for them. They might prefer to keep their distance rather than risk introducing something harmful into the galactic ecosystem. A less flattering explanation is that we are simply not interesting enough. We tend to operate under the narcissistic assumption that if aliens exist, they must be intensely curious about us. But curiosity is not a guaranteed universal trait. We do not study every single animal species on Earth with the same level of interest. Some species, like dolphins or chimpanzees, receive a great deal of scientific attention because they display a level of intelligence that we find intriguing. Other species, like bacteria or common worms, are largely ignored unless they are useful to us or pose a direct danger. If an alien species has categorized us as a common, unremarkable form of carbon-based life, they might have no compelling reason to engage with us. Perhaps they are waiting for a specific sign that we are ready for contact. An advanced species might be watching us and looking for certain indicators of societal maturity. These indicators could be technological, like the development of faster-than-light travel, or ethical, like the achievement of global peace and the responsible stewardship of our planet. If we have not yet demonstrated these traits, they may see us as an incomplete adolescent civilization that is still evolving. They might be perfectly willing to make contact, but only once we reach a certain developmental milestone. There is also the chilling possibility that space is filled with dangers we do not yet understand. We often assume that any intelligent species we encounter would be peaceful and curious, but there is no logical guarantee of that. The universe may contain civilizations that are hostile, predatory, or simply indifferent to the survival of others. If that is the case, any intelligent species would have a very strong incentive to stay as quiet as possible. They would avoid sending out signals that could attract the attention of a potential predator. This idea is known as the dark forest theory. In this view, space is like a dark and dangerous forest filled with silent hunters. The safest survival strategy is to remain silent and hidden. If this theory is correct, then aliens might know we are here, but they choose to stay quiet to avoid drawing unwanted attention to our corner of the galaxy. Our own broadcast into space would be seen as a dangerously naive act. Finally, there is the most profound and unsettling possibility of all: that we are truly alone. This is the most difficult answer for many to accept. We search for aliens because we want to believe that we are not the only intelligent beings in this vast, cold universe. But what if we are? If life, and especially intelligent life, is incredibly rare, then there may be no one out there to ignore us in the first place. This would mean that we have an enormous and terrifying responsibility. If we are the only intelligent life, then everything we do matters even more. We would be the sole witnesses to the universe, the only ones capable of understanding and appreciating its beauty. The idea that aliens might be ignoring us forces us to confront our own significance. It challenges our assumptions about intelligence, communication, and our rightful place in the universe. If they exist, and they choose not to contact us, the reasons for that decision could reveal more about our own shortcomings than about them. 25. The brain's solitary act of self-discovery. The brain is the only organ in the known universe that has named itself. This fact, while seemingly obvious once stated, reveals something profoundly deep and paradoxical about the nature of human consciousness. The brain, a 3-pound mass of gelatinous tissue made of billions of neurons, somehow became aware enough of its own existence to give itself a label. No other organ in the body performs this act of self-reflection. The heart beats, the lungs expand and contract, but neither has ever paused to question its own existence or purpose. The brain, however, has made a career of it. It studies itself, it wonders what it is and how it works, and it attempts to define its own nature using the very electrical and chemical circuits that make up its structure. Imagine a hand trying to grasp itself, or an eye trying to see itself without a mirror. That is the kind of dizzying, self-referential paradox the brain faces when it attempts to understand its own workings. It is simultaneously the subject and the object of its own study. This is a situation that is unique in all of science. A physicist studies the fundamental laws of the universe without being the universe itself. A biologist studies the processes of life, but is not life itself in the same all-encompassing way. But when a neuroscientist studies the brain is studying the brain. The observer is, in a very real sense, the observer. The questioner is the answer. Language plays a pivotal role in this act of self-recognition. As humans, we have an innate drive to label everything. We give names to objects, to emotions, and to abstract concepts. We even give names to things we do not fully understand, like black holes or dark matter. The brain, through the uniquely human faculty of language, created a word for itself. Brain. That simple, one-syllable word does not even begin to capture the full, staggering complexity of what the organ does, but it is enough to make it distinct from everything else. It is enough to separate it from the other organs, even though they all work together in a complex, interdependent system to sustain life. The brain's ability to name itself suggests a level of self-awareness that is of a completely different order than that of any other organ. The liver performs thousands of complex chemical reactions every second, but it does not guide thinking about its purpose. The kidneys filter our blood with remarkable efficiency, but they do not question the meaning of filtration. The brain, in stark contrast, does far more than just process signals. It reflects on its own existence. It asks what it is, how it works, and even poses the ultimate self-referential question of whether it truly possesses free will or is merely a deterministic machine. This self-awareness is not just about the act of naming. It extends to the act of understanding. The brain actively maps its own structure. Neuroscientists study the intricate dance of neurons, synapses, and neural networks, all of which are constituent parts of the brain itself. It is like a fantastically complex machine attempting to reverse engineer its own blueprint while it is still running. This ability is incredibly rare in the natural world. A rock does not question its own existence. A tree does not try to understand the process of photosynthesis. But the human brain is constantly, relentlessly seeking to explain itself. There is also a deep and humbling irony in this endeavor. The brain is the source of all human knowledge, the engine of our greatest scientific discoveries and artistic achievements, yet it struggles profoundly to grasp its own inner workings. It can understand the life cycle of a distant star and the intricate structure of a DNA molecule, but when it turns its formidable analytical powers inward, it finds itself wrapped in layers of mystery. The nature of consciousness, the mechanics of memory, and the origin of subjective thought remain some of the most difficult and unanswered questions in all of science. The brain named itself, but it still does not fully understand itself. Even the very act of thinking about the brain creates another layer of this self-referential complexity. Right now, as you read these words, your brain is processing them, decoding the symbols on the page, and translating them into meaningful concepts. But at the same time, it may also be thinking about itself thinking. This cognitive loop, this ability to be aware of one's own awareness, is a hallmark of human consciousness. No other organ in the body does this. The heart beats without asking why. The lungs inhale and exhale without considering the process. The brain, however, asks endless questions. It examines itself, it names itself, and it still wonders what it truly is. The paradox of self-awareness runs deep. The brain creates theories and models about itself, but it can never be truly outside of itself to observe its own operations directly. It must rely on external tools like brain scans and psychological experiments. But these are still just interpretations of data, processed and understood by the very same organ they are attempting to measure. It is a closed system, attempting to describe itself. This unique ability to reflect on itself, to give itself a name, and to question its own existence is what makes the human brain different from everything else we know. While the brain successfully named itself, it still doesn't have all the answers. It is both the creator of all our knowledge and our greatest remaining mystery. It is the tool we use to understand everything in the universe, yet it remains one of the hardest things to fully grasp. 26. The invisible architecture of our world. There are things we can see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. These 5 senses are the primary tools we use to navigate the world, but they also act as profound limitations, defining the boundaries of what we consider to be real. Just because we cannot detect something with our senses, however, does not mean it isn't there. The unseen exists all around us, a silent and invisible architecture that shapes the way we live, often without our conscious awareness. Think about the air you are breathing right now. You do not see it, but you know it is there. You feel it move when the wind blows. You see its effects when leaves rustle on a tree, or clouds drift across the sky, and you rely on it with every single breath you take. Yet, you rarely stop to consciously consider its constant presence. If someone had never felt the wind before, they might struggle to believe in the existence of air. It is not visible, but it is undeniably real and essential for life. Sound works in the same way. It exists as vibrations moving through the air. But those vibrations are only meaningful if they enter an ear that is capable of detecting them. Humans can hear sounds only within a specific, limited range of frequencies. But that range is not the totality of sound. Dogs can hear high-pitched frequencies that are completely silent to us. Elephants communicate with one another using infrasound, deep rumbles that are too low for us to detect. These sounds exist whether or not we are able to perceive them. Our world is filled with a symphony of sounds that are completely silent to our ears. Light is another prime example. The human eye is designed to detect only a tiny portion of the vast electromagnetic spectrum. We see the familiar colors of the rainbow, from red to violet, but beyond violet lies ultraviolet light, which bees can see, and beyond red lies infrared, which some snakes use to detect heat. X-rays, microwaves, and radio waves also fill the same spectrum, yet they are completely invisible to us. Without the aid of scientific instruments, we would not even know that they exist. Our own bodies are filled with unseen forces. Neurons fire in our brains, sending a cascade of electrical signals that translate into our thoughts, memories, and actions. You cannot see a thought, but you know that you have them. Emotions work in the same way. You feel anger, joy, or sadness with a profound intensity. But these feelings are not physical objects that you can hold or measure. The body certainly reacts to them. Your heart races, your muscles tense, your face breaks into a smile. But the emotions themselves remain invisible. History is filled with moments when people doubted the existence of the unseen. Germs were once a complete mystery. Before the invention of the microscope, no one knew that bacteria and viruses existed. People saw illness as a curse, a punishment from the gods, or a product of bad air. Now, we understand that countless tiny organisms, invisible to the naked eye, are the cause of many diseases. Gravity was once just a vague and mysterious idea. We experience its effects every second of every day, but we cannot see it. We know it is there because things fall to the ground, planets orbit the sun, and the tides move with the gravitational pull of the moon. The digital world we now inhabit thrives on the unseen. Wi-Fi connects our devices without the need for physical cables. Data, in the form of invisible radio waves, moves silently through the air, reaching our phones and computers. If someone from a century ago were to witness this, it would seem like magic. The internet itself is an unseen marvel. You can type a question into a device, and an answer appears almost instantly, sourced from a server thousands of miles away. Billions of bits of information travel across the globe in the blink of an eye, yet none of it is visible to the naked eye. The concept of the unseen extends beyond the realm of physics and biology. It deeply affects how we interact with one another. Trust is invisible. You cannot hold it or measure it with a ruler, but you can feel when it is present in a relationship, and you certainly know when it has been broken. Love exists in the same way. You can see its effects in a person's actions and hear it in their words, but love itself has no physical form. The same is true for fear. It can change a person's behavior, shape their decisions, and influence their entire life. Yet no one can point to fear itself as a tangible object. The limits of our perception shape how we think about reality. If something is unseen, many people have a natural tendency to assume it isn't there. But throughout history, the unseen has often turned out to be real. People once believed the earth was flat because they could not see its curvature. They thought the sun revolved around the earth because they could not feel the planet moving. We now understand that our immediate sensory appearances can be deeply misleading. The same principle applies to our personal and emotional experiences. Someone may feel utterly alone in a crowded room. Their loneliness is unseen by others, but it is as real and solid as any physical barrier. A person suffering from anxiety or depression may appear perfectly fine on the outside, but inside, they are struggling with powerful emotions that no one else can see. Understanding the power of the unseen changes how we view the world. It reminds us that our limits in perception do not equate to limits in reality. It encourages a sense of humility and curiosity, pushing us to question what we think we know and to explore what we do not. It challenges our assumptions, urging us to consider the powerful, invisible forces that are constantly shaping our lives. 27. The blank slate. Waking up without a yesterday. You wake up. The room is unfamiliar, painted a color you don't recognize. The bed beneath you is stiff, and the sheets have a texture that is foreign to your skin. There is a faint, low hum in the air, perhaps from an air conditioner or a distant refrigerator. You don't know which. You sit up and look at your hands, your own hands, and they feel like they belong to someone else. You examine them, turning them over, tracing the intricate lines on your palms. You have a sense that they should mean something, that they hold a history, but you don't know what it is. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed and stand. The floor is cold against your bare feet. You don't know where you are. More importantly, and more terrifyingly, you don't know who you are. Your mind is a blank slate, empty of the personal details that anchor a person to a life. Yet, something deeper hums beneath that emptiness. You have a feeling that you are someone. You have thoughts, you have instincts, but the facts, the names, the faces, the places that ground a person in reality, are completely missing. You step toward the door, and your body moves with a smooth, practiced ease, as if on autopilot. You know how to walk. You know how to reach for the doorknob. You turn it without a moment's hesitation. This kind of knowledge, the procedural memory that sits in your muscles and bones, is miraculously intact. Your body remembers what your mind does not. But memory is more than just function. It is the delicate, invisible thread that ties you to everything and everyone you have ever known. And without it, you are completely untethered, a ghost adrift in an unknown world. You step into the hallway. The walls stretch out before you, plain and unremarkable. You do not recognize them. You do not recognize the sound of your own breath or the quiet rhythm of your own footsteps on the floor. In this moment, you could be anyone. You could belong to any life, and there is nothing inside your own mind to contradict that thought. A woman appears at the end of the hall. She smiles at you, but her face does nothing to stir any sense of recognition within you. She says your name, but the sound of it lands without any weight, like a word in a foreign language. You try to respond, but the sound of your own voice surprises you. It belongs to you, and yet it doesn't. She sees the profound confusion on your face, and her smile fades, replaced by an expression of deep concern, maybe even fear. She says your name again, this time slower, as if giving you a chance to hold on to it. But there is nothing to hold on to. The word slips away as soon as she speaks it. She asks if you're okay. You don't know how to answer that question. What does it mean to be okay? You are standing. You are breathing. Your heart is beating, but you have no frame of reference. Were you okay yesterday? The day before? What does okay even feel like? You search your mind for an answer, but all you find is a vast, echoing silence. She tells you that she is your wife. The word wife lands with its dictionary meaning, but with none of its emotional feeling. You understand the concept of a wife, of a husband, of relationships, bonds, and connections. But you do not feel any of that when you look at her. She is simply a fact, a stranger standing in front of you. She reaches for your hand, but her touch is foreign. It doesn't stir anything inside you. She is a stranger, holding your hand and calling you by a name that feels hollow and meaningless. She leads you to the living room. There are photographs on the walls. In them you see your own face, smiling in some, serious in others. In one, you are holding a small child. She says that it is your son. You look at the child's face, at the curve of his nose, and the shape of his eyes. You can see the resemblance. You understand the concept of genetics, of family. But you do not feel it. There is no emotional connection between you and the smiling boy in the picture. He is a fact, like everything else in this house, a fact without any meaning. The days pass. The woman who calls herself your wife tells you stories about your life. She says that you love coffee. But when she hands you a cup, the taste is sharp and unfamiliar. She says that you love the smell of rain. But when a storm rolls in, the scent of wet earth stirs nothing inside you. She tells you about the vacations you took, the fights you had, the things that used to make you laugh. These stories are meant to bring you back to yourself, to rebuild the person you were. But they are just words. They belong to someone, but you are not sure it is you. You begin to learn things about yourself in a different way, not through the warmth of memories, but through the cold observation of patterns. You see how you react to things. You notice what makes you tense and what makes you relax. You find yourself drawn to certain kinds of music, certain foods. These small things begin to define you, not because they remind you of who you once were, but because they are actively shaping who you are now. One day, you wake up and see the woman sleeping beside you. She is still, In many ways, a stranger. But when she opens her eyes and smiles at you, you find yourself smiling back. Not because you remember loving her, but because in this present moment, you do. The past is gone. The person you were is a ghost. But the person you are, whoever that may be, is beginning to form. Not from memories, but from moments. Not from history, but from now.